here at the #1 Long Island broadcast, Monte The Pharaoh. I had the best time ever.
Hey, listen, Daddy. You're listening to the #1 broadcast, Monte and Pharaoh, Daddy, in Long Island. The best pro wrestling broadcast of all time, I think.
Jimmy, I got to tell you, man, it feels good to be back on YouTube. It was quite disappointing what happened to us, but we bounced back fairly quickly.
Well, what else would we do? We're almost at 5,000 subscribers.
Well, speaking of that, man, we need more members.
Okay.
What do you think we need to do to get the people of those 5,000 subscribers to come on and join the team as a Monte the Pharaoh member?
Nudity is out of the question. Any other ideas?
I don't know, man. I don't know. But what I do have a few ideas.
Well, just like Prel, they should tell 2 friends, and they could tell 2 friends, and so on and so on. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Check out all our content.
But that's, you know what? That's why you're the star of the show, because guess what? Members get special content. Even we spoke about it. Pharaoh came to me one day and he goes, "Man, what's the deal? I can't even watch some of these videos because I'm not a member." And I said, "There you go, Pharaoh. You got to be a member because this is what the members get. They get free content
Nice.
that none of the other fans that watch this show get.
That's right.
You get free autographs from some of these wonderful stars that come in, right?
Nice.
All you do is you go to the MNP webpage or our own page and shoot us an email and say, "Hey, man, I want a picture of Tommy Rich. I want a picture of whatever." And boy, that's on its way.
We give them their choice.
That's right.
We rock.
We do rock.
And you need to rock too. Join.
Hey, Jimmy. Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, yo. Back for another one.
Dude, do you know what's funny? It's like as you get older, remember when we used to do these shows and it'd be like, felt like an hour, felt like 2 hours. It's like that last show was like I'm watching the clock and we didn't even finish half the show. So, and
This is true.
We have great guests coming on. So I'm like, you know what? We'll go long here. They've got a lot to say. And then, when we're done, we'll finish up some of our stuff. But I'm excited to have these guys on, man. The one thing I've always said is I'm always amazed at people that trying to say this because it could come off insulting, but it's not how I mean. It's like they're not super well known within the industry, but they meant so much to the industry. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Some of the greatest stories come from those who were behind the scenes or part of. Look, not everybody's going to be Bruno Sammartino. Let's get real here. It takes a lot of components to make wrestling the beautiful sport that it is. And obviously, the 2 guests tonight have probably got stories that are much more interesting than my day at the doctor. I'll tell you that. See, I'm back to the doctor again with that damn lower back problem. I'm sorry, guys.
My day at that should be a movie. My day at the
doctor.
Oh
God. Yeah, it would be pretty good. Probably don't make it 2 hours though, No 350 days showing my aged knuckles driving the car. You know what I mean? Let's not.
You know what? I got to ask both these gentlemen what their thoughts on 350 days.
Sure, why not?
It's real quick. I want to get over some news items. The great Louis Tiant.
Oh boy!
Whoops, look at this, Monty. I was almost doing good production for a while.
Well, you had Louis up. I don't know how many got.
It got blue. It was blue, and then I hit the wrong number. So anyway, Louis Tiant, Cuban legend who pitched for the Red Sox to the World Series brink, dies at age 83. Thoughts on Louis Tiant, dude? I haven't thought about Louis Tiant in I don't know how long.
Louis Tiant was the man. I personally believe, especially with today's skewed numbers and the admittance of the Negro League statistics that were very skewed, as Benny has pointed out 1,000 times, when you have 7 guys in your lineup named Smith on the scorecard with a question mark, how am I supposed to take every last statistic that happened back in the Negro League seriously and say that it's the same as the MLB, which it wasn't.
Right.
Louis Tiant's lifetime career record was 229 wins with 172 losses. In 1968, the year of the pitcher, this is all by memory, by the way. Louis
Which is
Tiant.
amazing to me that you knew what his record
Well,
was, because I'm just like,
Louis Tiant was special. He was special. I feel he was a Hall of Fame level pitcher. I know that 300 wins was the barometer back in those days, but you're not going to tell me with a straight face that Rick Russell, I'm sorry, Bert Blyleven, who's in the Hall of Fame and had the numbers compiled to do it. You're not going to tell me with a straight face that Bert Blyleven was a better pitcher in his career than Louis Tiant. He wasn't. Louis Tiant won 20 games 4 different times. Louis Tiant was the ace of the 1975 Boston Red Sox and pitched a stellar performance in, I think, what they call the greatest World Series game ever played. And Mike, that's the famous one with Carlton Fisk waving his home run fair.
right, right.
I'm sure you've seen it 1,000 times.
I have.
Louis Tiant was a winner, although you could say, hey, at the end of the day, Louis Tiant is Henrik Lundqvist. I don't personally see that as an insult whatsoever. Or a Patrick Ewing. It's a guy who deserved a bunch of rings, was definitely a reason why you would win a ring, but never was fortunate enough to win a ring, like Jim Rice, like Carl Yastrzemski, like Dwight Evans, like Carlton Fisk. What a great, great Boston Red Sox team. What a great pitcher. Now, most people don't know. You remember his crazy delivery, right? How he would turn his back
Right.
to second base and then come forward. He did not always have that pitching style. He had gotten injured, well, I think, when he was with Cleveland. And he was actually released at one point. But he figured out a different way to throw the ball to compensate for his injury. And for some reason, for him, it was turning his back fully on one leg, as you remember, and staring at second base. He actually took more time looking at the outfield than he did the actual plate that he was throwing to, which is incredible because his strikeout to walk ratio was above 2-1. And I think, as a baseball fan, that's the barometer. You better at least have a 2-1 strikeout to walk ratio.
Yeah,
So
sure.
the guy had control. The guy was a multiple-time 20-game winner. Great personality. Do you remember when he came to New York, how beloved he was? He was only
Yeah.
there for 2 years, but you remember the commercial about biting to a Yankee, Frank?
Yep, yep,
You remember that.
yep.
Louis Tiant should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. And it's funny how numbers always play in. Like Juan Marichal, I think, was the first one that they put in, because he's Hispanic or whatever his background was. But Louis is what, like maybe 14 wins away from him in his career? Really? Is that really, Mike? Is that really the difference? 229 career wins on it. Clearly a stud team that he was the stud of. It wasn't like he was starter number 3. He was
Right.
Louis. He was Louis Tiant. Louis. It hurts to see them go, Mike. These were guys when we were kids. The great 1978 race between the Yankees and the Red Sox. Tiant was a huge part of that.
Well, sooner or later, Foxhole Willie will be talking about us. Too bad they had to go.
How did we wait a minute? How did we go from Louis Tiant to us? I mean, my back is bad, but I don't know if I'm ready to. Wow.
Listen. Speaking, David Crockett from the Crockett's, right? He now has a podcast. Everybody's got a podcast. We're all battling for our little
Sure.
piece of turf, right?
Sure.
Most recently, he was discussing Rick Rude on one of his podcasts, but Manny Fernandez came up and he basically said, I never trusted that guy. I could never trust that guy. And it was him and who's the other guy? The heavy Flair's
Well, wasn't
daughter's husband, Conrad. So this is the reason I'm bringing it up. We know Manny. We met Manny. Seems like a great
Yeah.
guy. We've
Yeah.
taken some heat because we stood by him on
Yeah.
his Vietnam stance and
Sure.
that he served in Vietnam, and a lot of
Mhm.
people, due to whatever Cornette say, believe that he's a liar, whatever else. But this is what I wanted to ask you. Right, you're married to the beautiful Miss Karen McDaniel, and from what I remember,
fortunate enough to be. Go on.
from what I remember, she has got a pretty decent relationship with Manny. So I
Very
guess
good friends.
right. So my question
Very
is
good
like,
friends.
what
Yeah.
what is Karen's thoughts on Manny and the kind of heat that he seems to be able to draw from the
Uh,
wrestling world?
I don't know if we've ever gotten into like too deeply about who doesn't like Manny or why, but I know this much about Manny Fernandez. Manny Fernandez is someone that people can't stand because he's kind of what I am. He's kind of what you are. Manny Fernandez tells the truth.
Mm,
Okay. Manny Fernandez does not give you a fucking song and dance. Okay. If Manny Fernandez feels some way about somebody, he's going to say so. Right. And it's funny too, Mike. Recently, I don't know why, but I came across the cable version of Manny and Tommy.
right,
And it is one of the most entertaining 30 minutes you could ever want from a wrestler or wrestlers in this case, because they're telling it how it really was.
right.
You understand what I'm saying? Mandy Fernandez, if he thinks you're a piece of shit, then obviously you were a piece of shit to him. That's all there is to it. Now, for other people to sit there and say that they know what his valor, his service time was, is offensive to me. And honestly, the government, I would tend to think the government wouldn't allow Manny to publicly talk about what he did or
Well,
didn't
the
do.
weird thing is these
It's just
wrestling fans are like, it's public access. You could look it up
public
yourself.
access to what? Something
And that's what
reliable?
I'm saying. I
To
have no
what?
idea.
You
It's
can
like,
find anything you
mm,
want, and you know it on the internet that will back your opinion on something. You can find multiple sites that'll back it, and you can find multiple sites
you
that'll
know what?
oppose it.
The best part about
Any
all this,
subject.
though, Jimmy, is our
Yeah.
guest, right? Fred and Nikita. I wonder if they know any of these guys. So it would be interested to hear their thoughts, right? Because they've been
Right.
around.
Of
So,
course.
again, I'm interested. Running into something else.
Yeah.
Recently, Jonathan Coachman.
All right.
He has a podcast,
Of course he
and he
does.
says Vince McMahon beat up Michael Cole for 20 years. If you're saying 1 to 10, it usually about 4. The only time he would yell is if you didn't say it when he wanted you to say it. So say, for example, Cody Rhodes is coming to the ring. He'd be like, Cody Rhodes, big night this Saturday, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now I will say this, and you can tell exactly when Vince got pushed out. If you listen to Michael Cole, because imagine getting beaten down verbally for 20 years. I don't even know what the fuck that means,
Oh,
dude. But
fucking happy day. Mike, does it really make a difference to you how Michael Cole's been announcing? Have you seen such an extraordinary change?
my
And
whole
it's like,
thing,
oh
though,
my
if it was
God.
so terrible, why didn't you fucking quit?
Look, I don't even
Right?
think there's
Just
been an
quit.
I don't even think there's been an extraordinary change. I don't tune in because I go, wow, the announcing's really improved. Talk about taking something and sticking it under a fucking. Do you really have that much fucking time in your hands to fucking do that, you wrestling dork? I mean, seriously, what's the deal here? And you're fucking so right. Oh, for 20 years, Vince McMahon. Listen, Earth to Dreamers. That's Vince's job. Vince's
Yeah.
job was to decide how his show should be run. So guess what, Mike? If it's in the contract and I signed that contract with you, and you're going to be in my ear telling me how you want me to say something, and I'm accepting the paycheck, where exactly do I have the right to bitch about it? By the way, is Michael Cole saying anything about any of this?
Dude, you know what? It's
It's
Vince
just
McMahon.
why.
It's Vince McMahon bashing time. And again,
It's
interested in hear what
everything.
Fred and Nikita say, because we've known Nikita for a bit, and I got to tell you, I was before the show. This is my first time meeting Fred, and I'm excited for that too. But I was
Okay.
telling Nikita,
Yeah.
every time I catch him on a podcast, he's
Yeah.
so well spoken.
Dude, the guy's smart.
Dude, it's like, but you can listen to him
He's
all day.
intelligent.
And you know what? He's got different
helps.
thoughts. He also has different thoughts than you and I too,
Oh,
which is great.
I know.
But you know,
I'm
but you know
sure.
what? It's not like when you're listening or you feel like you're talking to Keita, it seems like it's like you're gonna have a professional conversation about it. I kind of dig it. And I
Right.
only talked to Fred for a very short moment, but he seems like a really good gentleman too. By the way, on the first show, you had mentioned you hurt your back and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And
Oh yeah. I'm flying.
one thing I wanted to share
Uh,
with you, dude, is see this wallet.
yeah. You
This is
mean
my
like? Wait,
wallet.
hold on. You mean like this big lumpy one that I sit on.
Yeah, pull that thing out.
Dude, this thing's the fucking eyesore of the world. Everything is. Where's the camera? See, I'm just like you. Look at this. It's got like hair things sticking out of it because it's so old and withered. And everything I put into it, watch what I could do with it. Hey,
Exactly. It's flimsy.
Everything falls the fuck out. Now, this is my fault, by the way, because I can't seem to find a decent wallet. Do you have any tips?
Well,
for solutions?
it's funny you brought that up,
This is
man. And this is
ridiculous.
why we've got
Get
back
outta here.
problems. So for old men like us, and even for young people, I ran into this company called Ridge, right?
Okay.
Ridge.
I like the name. To begin with,
RIDGE, right?
yeah,
Look
that's
at
fine.
look at this wallet, right? Carries everything you need, right? And
It's
look at this.
compact.
It's compact, and just like
Okay.
this, you push
Okay.
down, you
Yeah,
fan it
yeah.
out. You need a credit card. I got to pay for something. Just that
Oh.
easy. I go pay it. Boom. Put it right back in. And guess what?
You can wait, no, you can just flip out and have multiple choice that easy.
That easy. Look how easy this is.
Wow.
And you know how stupid I am. You see how easy that was to fan out just like that, man?
Yeah.
Look at that, dude.
I'm stupider, but yeah, I get it. Okay.
And then you got
awesome.
the cash right on the back here. And
Nice.
guys, look, this episode is sponsored by Ridge, and if you use the promo code YouTube10, that's YouTube 10,
Okay.
you receive 10% off any Ridge product. Guys, I'm telling you, man, look at the difference. Look at the difference. You've got to use Ridge. Monte and the Pharaoh are telling you, please support Monte the Pharaoh. And guess what? They've got other cool stuff. Because I'm an asshole, I just dropped it. Hold on.
It's all the way over there. Oh,
Only Monte will do this, folks. They
Wait,
also sell.
How's your back? You okay picking that thing up?
Well, since I've been using Ridge, my back is like 100% better.
Right.
Also, dude, check this out. From
Right.
Ridge, I ordered this. Right, I know you're recently married, right?
Yeah.
24 karat gold plated ring. Look how beautiful that thing is, right? Ridge.com. Again, use YouTube 10 to receive 10% off. And guess what? If you're a working man and you're working with electric, you know you don't want to be using gold. You want to burn yourself. They also come with a nice rubber ring that you can wear.
They got those
we all know the wives.
Yeah,
That's
nice.
right. And you know the wives don't want to, they get pissed off if you stop using their shit, right? Or showing you married because then some hot girl, she doesn't see you married. She's jumping all over your shit. Especially if you're using the Ridge wallet, dude.
Nice.
Look at that. Look how thin that thing is, Jimmy.
Does it come in different colors and stuff? I mean, that's perfect.
You know what? You're brilliant. And guess what they just came out with? NFL team Ridges.
Ooh.
So if you're a Jet fan and you want to show your Jet color, or you're a Yankee fan, you can wear your Yankee fan Ridge.
Okay.
So anyway, I recommend that, and
very nice. Well,
thank you to
Ridge.
Thank you to Ridge. I agree.
Thank you very much. Awesome.
All right, dude. That being said, we're going to take a commercial break, and then we're bringing on referee Fred Rubenstein along with Nikita Brezhnikov, and we're going to hear their story. All right?
Very good. See you in a sec.
buddy.
All right.
I'm afraid because it says weed whacker. I'm scared.
Maven, Manscaped. What are you thinking about
Love it.
Manscaped, dude?
Love it.
What do you use it for?
Necessity. What don't I use it for? Put it this way. The only hair I have on my entire body is these eyebrows.
Yeah.
That you see. These caterpillars racing to the middle of my nose. That's it.
That is it.
That's all I have. And that's all I want.
That's the
So Manscaped is a
You-
must.
We were talking before the show. There's nothing worse than just hair.
Yeah.
Right? Hair on a woman, hair on a man. It's just bad.
Absolutely. And it's the one thing that the older I get, it starts growing more in unwanted areas.
Absolutely.
I hate it.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
Just going to go out there.
Oh, boy.
Go for it.
You're doing a deed.
Yes.
Again, I don't want you to have to admit this because we, as men, we try not to admit this. But if you're going to go do a deed on a woman, would you rather have her be hairless or a little hair, racing stripe, or
Racing stripe.
full retro bush?
Racing stripe.
Retro Bush is out.
Yes, thank you.
Retro Bush is out.
Yeah.
I don't mind a small, well manicured landing strip. every now and then, if it's completely, and I'm talking like baby's ass bald, then I start. Where is that pedophilia line? I don't want to
Wow.
wander into that.
That's
thought
very
of it like
interesting.
that.
I never thought about that. You're a
Wow.
smart dude. Holy shit.
So if the landing strip is clean enough for the plane to go in smoothly, you're cool with that.
If the landing strip has, like I said, well manicured,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can see both sides. It's not
Like blinking lights on both sides of that
I
landing?
just don't. I don't want. I don't want the shrubbery going off into unwanted areas on that as well.
Gotcha. Oh,
Yeah,
look
but-
what you found. Ooh.
I got to be all honest though. Hey, the older I get though, I don't think I can be as
I found it! I found
Have
it!
you ever gone down there and she slowly brings down the underwear? Then
What is
retro? Just,
Absolutely.
You're like, whoa.
Wow,
Yeah,
like,
I'm
like
46,
it
of
pops
course.
out?
Do you like walk out or what do you do?
No, I muster through. I muster up the courage to get
He's a
through.
trooper. He's a trooper. Gotta give him an A.
Not all heroes wear capes.
Yeah,
There you go.
I hear you.
There you
Listen,
go.
I couldn't
Super
say.
Bush.
I couldn't say. Well, if you have the same beliefs as Maven does, Manscaped could help you.
Absolutely.
The weed whacker.
Absolutely.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that I may have to, go in a room, close the door, and hang out with the weed whacker for a little while.
Yeah, I think you're a retro guy, aren't you?
I like 70s adult films, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
but
only
with that,
Ron
we're going to take a
Jeremy,
quick
Batman.
commercial break, and we'll be
Anyway.
back with this wrestling icon, Maven.
All right, welcome back to Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monte The Pharaoh. As my super production skills, as I am bringing on our special guest, Fred Rubenstein. Am I saying that right, Fred? Rubenstein or Rubenstein?
Steen. It's a tomato thing, but we favor Steen.
You got it.
Frankenstein.
That's
And
the
then-
guy.
And then the great Nikita Brezhnikov in the house. Nikita, how's the feedback?
Well, I'm getting a double again. I'm still getting a double.
Is it off your computer? What are you thinking? What are you thinking here? What's happening? You sound good on our end.
Right? I don't know. Everything was good earlier, and okay, now it seems better.
Okay.
And we're
Wait a
off.
minute. I'm getting a delay. I got a delay. I don't know what's going on.
All right. Well, we could slow it down so when you get it, then you'll hear it.
That's
What do
the
you think?
problem. It's a delay. It's not like a double. I'm getting a delay.
Right. So we're speaking and it's kind of delaying to you, right?
I'm still getting it. You want me to?
Well,
You
you
want
can
me to go
bounce.
out and come back in?
Yeah, go out and come back in, and meanwhile, we'll
Do
talk a
that.
little to Fred. What do you think?
All right. Leave the studio.
Bye. He'll be back. Fred, how are you, my friend?
I am well, and I hope you two gentlemen are as well.
We are, and we're very excited to have both you and Nikita joining us, and we consider it an honor. I was speaking to Nikita before the show, and I don't know if you heard me and Jimmy speaking, but we were talking about not that you're an unknown entity in pro wrestling, but you're not main focus, but we're always impressed by such people like yourself that have done so much for the industry. And when you tell your story, people realize, wow, this guy's done a lot. So again, I think from both of us, thank you for taking the time out to come on Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monte The Pharaoh.
Thank you. Albeit Nassau, Suffolk County, Long Island is okay. The Long Island Arena in Comac, where I watched many a thing,
My
the Nassau
hero.
Coliseum. May I
Nice.
set the record straight because I was listening to you guys.
Sure.
Manny the Raging Bull Fernandez is a friend of mine.
Okay.
I'm a Vietnam veteran. I have the DD-214 to prove it. I was also at the World Trade Center, and I had the prostate cancer to prove that. Manny served in Vietnam.
God.
He is not like Senator Richard Blumenthal, who practiced
God.
stolen valor. Manny was there. One of the greatest matches that ever made the circuit on the Indies in the sovereign state of New Jersey was Manny Fernandez versus Iron Man Tommy Cairo, a close personal friend who lives maybe 12 miles from where I am. Back right around the turn of the century, we ran it in a local junior high school. And this is what Manny did to me. Now that's color. It wasn't a blade job. Manny came back with a chair, and unfortunately, his timing was off, and I got whacked. My son was 8 at the time. The local parish priest who was there, I thought he was going to administer the last rites, which for a Jewish kid is pretty good. But
Oh,
Manny
yeah.
was the real deal. He worked as an exterminator for a while when his worth went down, but he served in Vietnam. And anybody who said he didn't doesn't know what in the hell they are talking about. There's
Well,
no reason he's
well,
a
Fred,
man
Fred,
of honor.
Fred, let me
what?
ask. Go ahead, good, Jimmy.
Yeah, Fred, what cause is this just internet troll people? What causes a person to be so evil and so lack of information as you have to get online and publicly do these sorts of things to a man of obviously Manny Fernandez's stature and valor? What causes this idiocy to happen in the first place?
The keyboard commandos often have too much time on their hands, and they want to live vicariously through somebody like Manny's sweat and blood. But to assail his honor is way below the belt. He served, he's probably responsible that others live to come home. As far as I'm concerned, to sum it up, he's a patriot.
Well, let
Amen.
me, amen. And let me say this, Fred. Thank you for
Thank
serving this
you.
company. Thank you for your
Thank
service.
you.
Thank
And
you.
I want to get into the 9/11 thing too, because I had no idea. Nikita was telling me that off studio, so I wanted to
Mhm.
speak to you about that. But just to finish up on the Manny Fernandez thing, it all started with Jim Cornette, right? Jim Cornette is the one
Correct.
that accused Manny Fernandez of lying about and stolen valor. What are your feelings about Jim Cornette starting this whole thing?
Horny is a friend of mine. As a matter of fact, I'll be down in Louisville on family business around Thanksgiving. We've worked together often. We always got along. I have great respect for his acumen in the business. I have great respect for what he did with Smoky Mountain. The answer is I don't know. All I know is what I know to be fact. The answers that Manny gave me are not something you can get off the information superhighway online. You had to be there. He knew the deployments, he knew the methods and procedures. My unit was the 5th Air Rescue out of Tonsanut Air Base. He knew what we did. No, you had to be there for that. I don't know. Would I love to ask Jimmy? Yeah, I would. We've known each other a long time, and I consider him a friend.
Great answer. So, Nikita, Fred, for people that do not know who you two gentlemen are, I ask you each maybe if you could tell a little bit about yourself to the wrestling audience. Nikita, if you'd start off, that'd be great.
Absolutely. I was Nikolai Volkov's manager for about 25 years. And a lot of people want to talk about, well, you weren't in WWF with him. That's true. But I worked with everybody. I worked with Bruno Sammartino. He was referee, but nevertheless, I worked with Bruno and I got clocked. I wasn't the last one to get clocked by Nikolai. Had to do that. But all the years, Nikolai broke me into the business. And if I wasn't good enough, he would have been the first one to say, you, my friend, you come with me, but you have to sit down. You cannot do this. But it never happened. And Fred can attest to it. We worked together many times. And I did write a book called When It Was Real. I'm not here to just push the book, but it talks about what wrestling meant to us. When I say us, kids of the 70s, when it was real. Yeah, I knew from day one. My mother was, yak, 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 what's going on? I said, look, Mom, I'm not going to tell you Marcus Welby's not a doctor tonight. Please, just let me watch it, okay? I'm happy, all right?
Well
Leave
done.
me
Well
the hell
said.
alone already.
Well
And
said.
my old man, he was a bastard. He was an alcoholic. He called me all kind of shit names, beat the hell out of me. But guess what was there for me, guys? Wrestling, as
There
it
you go.
always is till this day. So when I got lucky enough, because I was collecting, remember the 80s when we had the VHS trading going on? Tapes.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so I was trying to build my collection. I was working for the police department. I'm retired detective sergeant from Baltimore City Police. So I see what all became part of our lives and years later, the signs, the different color signs, pro wrestling's coming. It was in the 7-Eleven. So I said, hey, good, I'm working that day. Maybe Nikolai's got something, tapes that I could get. So I go to see him, and I'm there. He's like, hello, Sergeant. He walks in the door. So, of course, he sets his gimmick table up. So I go up, we start talking. He's like, no, I don't have nothing, but I will pay you. I would love to have. I said, you're not going to pay me shit. All the years you entertained and gave up your body, I'll make you tapes. And WWE, if you're listening, I didn't charge a dime, so go to hell. So we become friends. And then I kept pestering him to get in the business. He said, well, you have a good job, but you could be my manager. So then it took off from there. And kaboom, I'm here is where I am all of these years later. Still love it. Still saves me every day. Thank God for wrestling. People want to get on the Vince McMahon beat the shit out of him wagon. You know what? Knock it off. Vince, he went a little bit haywire at the end, but what he did in the 70s and the 80s, thank you, Vince. He was the greatest wrestling announcer ever. Okay. When he would call a match from Madison Square Garden, he did it with, like Howard Cosell, it was legitimate. He didn't get stupid. It was well received. The messages came through. You actually, that's why you could believe it. Not only the wrestlers made it believable, but so did Vince. He sold it perfectly. All those promos, he would just, Nikolai told me he'd shoot from the hip. Okay, here we're going to be in Baltimore, blah, blah, blah. And that was it. Off they went.
He had a great excitement tone to his announcing.
Yes. When the pitch needed to go up, he would take the pitch up and he would bring it home. You know what? He was the biggest fan ever, without a doubt. He loved it that much.
Do you think he wanted to be a wrestler himself?
Yes, absolutely. Nikolai used to tell me, and I was good friends with Strongbow as well, and he said, that's all Vince wanted to do was be a wrestler, but his father said no. And then he did all that shit later, against Stone Cold and all that, but it's like, hey, I can't blame him. You know what? He's writing the checks, running the company. I'm going to get in the ring. God bless him. Good for him.
Nikita, was Vince McMahon the greatest heel ever in professional wrestling?
Oh,
no.
God. He
No.
was hated, though.
Oh,
Mr.
God,
McMahon? No. But what about Mr. McMahon in his prime, Nikita? Think about the hatred level. That was pretty high.
I mean, he did a good job.
He's upper tier. I would think he's upper tier. Would you at least say he's an upper tier heel? I mean, considering that. Really?
Wow. Look at that.
Wow. I'm trying,
Fred,
Mike. I'm trying. Fred, help me out. I'm getting nowhere
Fred's
here.
going to tell you, when we saw Waldo Von Erich, when Spiros Arion turned on Bruno, Zbyszko, Greg Valentine.
Spirios Arion, I'm with you on. I've seen Spirios Arion cause a riot. I have told you about that, Mike. Spirios Arion was a real lightning rod for problems. He was.
He was stabbed. Freddie Blassie lost an eye from fans throwing shit. Cars. Nikolai said, bastards would demolish my car. All 4 fucking tires. He said, not just one, all 4. It's like, Vince was good.
Do you think, though, that it's because the curtain had been torn down? I mean, think about it. Yeah. It is true that in those days, and hey, you said the book, when it was real. It was real. I remember those days. Yes. But by the time Mr. McMahon shows up, kayfabe is destroyed. Everybody knows that it's a scripted act, like you said with the Marcus Welby comment earlier. So maybe is it perhaps that Mr. McMahon never got stabbed because the curtain was torn down?
We would talk about it for like just the bullshit 1 hour. And after commercials, would you have 50 minutes? We would talk about it till the next week. Today, people go and they pay $300 for this stuff. And it's like, okay, what are we going to have to eat? Okay. And it's like, it's over with. Like they just saw a Broadway show and they're gone.
I think that's with everything, right? Everything has changed, right?
Well, maybe sports,
baseball.
Has it changed for the better? Has it changed for the better? Change cannot be stopped. The minute the change stops, we're dead. Because let's change on a broad spectrum. Let's talk about medicine. Let's talk about discrimination that used to be. Let's talk about the things that had a negative, somewhat irreversible effect on humankind. Change is good, but like anything else, it has to be balanced. What Nikita told you is spot on. I knew Vince's father from the black and white days, Willie Gilzenberg, Johnny Addy, all of the people that had a pivotal role and were recognized, but they couldn't get the product out. Nobody ever heard of pay-per-view.
Right.
Nobody ever heard of Ticketmaster. I was
Sure.
in row one at the old Madison Square Garden the night that Bruno won the belt off Buddy Rogers in 48 seconds. My late friend Eddie Gersh was the referee. The place went electric, but only 20,000 some odd people saw it. That's all the people that saw it. If that were on today, ironically, I was with my nephews in the new Madison Square Garden the day Hogan won the title off the Iron Sheet. My buddy Jack Lutz was the referee there. And that's the difference. So change is good, but like anything else, you can't go full throttle. Someplace
Right.
along the line, and Nikita's saying it, common sense has got to kick in.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to do when when they yell boring, when New Jack would jump off the rafters, and then the boring was what are you going to do to top this?
Yeah.
Amputate an arm?
Right.
Come on.
Right.
Wow.
Hey, Fred, I'm
Right.
going to give you a little piece of history of Eddie Gersh. What a great name. I'm almost positive the last time he worked the Garden was against Superstar and Dusty Rhodes, September 26th of 77. I don't see him after that. So, my goofy brain, I wouldn't forget. I
No,
think that was his end.
his memory is better than any computer. Eddie Gersh went back to his first love, which was boxing. At that time, the New York State Athletic Commission was tough. Floyd Patterson was the chair of the commission in name only. It was run by the politicians. But you're
What
right.
a, what a
Eddie's dead
shock.
now, but but he went on to manage boxers. You had gymnasiums right next to the Garden on 8th Avenue.
But
This is
guys,
the old Garden at 49th and 8th.
the sad reality though is today. Now look, I'm old school. Mike is old school too. We not as old school as you guys, but we do remember watching wrestling on UHF. I started with a black and white TV watching Vince McMahon doing color commentary. I remember Spirio Sarion. I remember the Wolfman when he would come on and they put the X over the screen. The bottom line today though is not only has the curtain been torn down, but there's no patience level amongst the crowd. A rest hold that was the norm back in the day when it was real would never be tolerated today. The fans have no attention span. So to want the past,
He's
I
right.
believe somewhere, I think what Fred's saying too is that somewhere in the middle lies the truth.
But
And maybe perhaps the cartwheel fest is too much. For me, the cartwheel fest is too much.
But Jimmy, you got to be fair. This isn't exclusive to just professional wrestling. Exclusive to
Yeah, I
football.
know.
They
I
changed the
know.
rules of baseball because
They
people
have.
want to be in and out in an
They
hour and a
have.
half.
They've done it with you can't touch a quarterback. If you look at old
Yeah.
footage of Joe Namath, he's lowering his head with his bad knees and hitting a guy in the gut with his stomach to get that extra yard. You can't even touch a quarterback today. So
Hey,
everything has changed. But like I think what Fred is saying is that too far is too far. Somewhere in the middle lies the truth. Maybe it shouldn't be as rough as it was in the old days, but maybe it shouldn't be as soft as it
What are
is
you going to
today.
do? Like I said, what are you going to do to top this? In the old
Right.
days in the Garden, my father, rest in peace, used to line up for the tickets. We paid for row one. I was 13 the night of that match with San Martino. I know it exactly. I can tell you exactly what happened in 48 seconds. You never forget. The ticket for ringside was $5.
Mm.
You could sit in the nosebleed section for 75 cents. You went to Sunnyside Garden on Queens Boulevard, it was $4. Okay, but that's all the traffic would bear at that time. Salaries were proportionate. Now
but
you're right. $300 is nothing to go to a major pay-per-view. That's
Nothing.
nothing.
and Fred, they
Nothing.
kept that price for a long time. They didn't
They sure
take
did.
the price up because they knew, hey, they're coming in. Don't bleed them out. Just give it to them. I saw an interview with Willie Gilzenberg, and of all things, Playboy. I got it for the article. So they
Yeah,
said, well,
sure.
what kind of advertising are you going to do? He's like, what advertising? What the hell am I going to waste good money for? All I need is an inch in the newspaper. People
all
don't
they
care
had.
if it's a sham or not. They want to come and scream and holler. They'll be here tomorrow night. And he was right.
Yeah.
All the inches, the squibs in the New York newspapers were maybe a column and a half, an inch. That's all it was. Because what was the job in pro wrestling? What did we used to say in the locker room? Okay, it's full out there. You got him here. Now give him a reason to come back. Why did everything happen in threes? Sergeant Slaughter and the Iron Sheik. When did it go to finish? They sold out the Garden 3 times. And that's the way money was made because that's the way marketing was done. Those were the mores back then. And that's how you did it. Then, as the electronic delivery of the product became broader and broader, yeah, they took it to extremes. They were running out of gas. The car was chugging to a stop. When you got to listen to the crowd. When I refereed, my gimmick is Fred Richards. Guys would get, hey, Freddie, how did it look? I used to tell them, I don't give a flying F how it looked. I care how it sounded.
Mm.
Was the crowd into it? Did you do your job in the first 30 seconds? They knew who to hate and who to love? Otherwise, you didn't do your job. I don't give a shit how many high spots, low spots, ink spots that you did. It didn't matter. An emotional crowd is a
Right.
spending crowd.
Right.
Nikolai was a master at that. Nikita and I were talking earlier. Okay, here's Nikita at a school show in the year 2000, working the Patriot. When he started the gimmick where he would sing the Russian national anthem and he'd segue into the American national anthem, the crowd went crazy. The crowd went crazy when Sergeant Slaughter did the flip and he went over to the bad guy's side. People love to wave a flag. Corporal Kirshner did it. How many others do it? It was good then. Would it be as good nowadays, given the realities of the political climate? I don't know.
They wouldn't let
But
it.
I do agree with what John said, with what Nikita said, I beg your pardon, about Vince. Okay, he was a great announcer. The only ones that came close to him was when Gorilla Monsoon teamed up with Bobby the Brain.
There
Rest
we
in peace,
go.
both of you.
I
That
love
was
them.
fantastic. But
Yep.
Vince Jr., as they called him, he was terrific. And boy, could he put on the face. He knew how to do it. And I remember the father when they used to do the Thursday night tapings with the announcer was Ray Morgan. I went down, took the Greyhound bus to the Capitol Arena at 14th and W Streets, Northwest in Washington, D.C. And then every Tuesday night they were at Sunnyside Garden, and Saturday nights they were up in Bridgeport, Connecticut at the City Arena. That's how they sold the product. They had 6 hours a week in black and white television. Black and white, none of it live, all on a 1 week. And every so often they'd be a screw up because somebody would announce a card that was dependent on the other card going down and they were out of order. But nobody noticed.
I
Nobody
try to
cared.
I try to smarten up the kids of today, and I tell them the old championship wrestling show was the infomercial for Madison Square Garden.
Right.
It was
That's
good
right.
for Phil Zacco, use it for Baltimore, Philly, but everything that's done like tonight in 1978, My Via turns on Backlund. They did it in the second hour. Why? Because it was shown on October 21st. October 23rd was the card in Madison Square Garden. And then they can announce November 20th, Backlund against My Via. Plus, My Via turned on Strongbow. Everything was geared because it was Black Friday. If the Garden failed, the whole company was going to go to shit. So you had to keep them coming back. That's all they had.
I,
Yeah,
I
you
want
did.
I want to get into how Fred got into the industry, but before it gets away from me, I got a question for both of you. We know the accusations against Vince McMahon Jr. What are your thoughts on these accusations, gentlemen? And what are your feelings about this?
It's the United States of America. Anybody can make accusations. Following due process, if they're proven, we give them credibility. Until then, they're nothing more than allegations that aren't tested until you get into a court of law.
There it is.
It's the same principle we talked about with Manny Fernandez. Prove your case.
Jimmy, I'm loving these guys right now.
Well, they're telling everything that we tell, and the names that we get called, by the way, I think that they would be appalled at because we are called names for every last opinion we've heard coming out of both your respectful mouths tonight. Nikita, what's your thought about Vince McMahon's accusations right now?
Nobody perfect. I mean, what the hell? If whatever he did, a lot of this bullshit. Look, I used to work domestic violence. I used to work with sexual assault victims. When something bad happens, God forbid, you should be tarred and feathered, horsewhipped. Yeah, that's terrible. But
Right.
when you come back later and say, this happened to me all these years ago, like you were talking earlier about Michael Cole and things, it's like, well, what the hell did you stay there for?
Right.
Why didn't you tell somebody? What is going on now all of a sudden? It makes you stop and think. And it's bad for the victims. And I'm talking women here mostly. It happens to guys too, but mostly 99% women.
Sure.
Men are bastards at times, without a doubt. I witnessed it in my job as a policeman 27 years.
Oh,
But
can imagine.
usually people come forward because you can't function. I mean, it's just horrible. Now, Vince is a target. He makes himself, like you guys said, he was a great heel. Yeah, he was. But when you open that door, somebody's going to kick it off the friggin' hinges at some point, too. So you want to
Right.
jump in there? Jump in, but know you're going to get wet and know there's no towel for you. You're going to have to walk around that way for a while, Mo. That's just the way it is.
Right. He's never been convicted of anything I can remember, but yet somehow he is treated as if he's already guilty. And if you disagree, you suddenly become lumped in with all the things that they hate about, I don't know, a Donald Trump or
Oh,
whatever.
Trump, yeah.
We've experienced this. Both of us have experienced this. Mike is a lot tougher than I am. I've learned to try to ignore it. But when we're called pro-pedo, because we're backing somebody like a Vince McMahon, where they're saying that he was doing all sorts of things, and it gets so out of control. So, it's refreshing to hear people who look at it the legal way, because this is the legal way. He's never been convicted of anything. Why would I call him all these things until it's been proven?
You remember the drug scandal? He was completely acquitted following due process.
Right. Right.
The system worked when given a
We
chance.
still hear to this day that he killed Chris Benoit. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Oh, I've
Who
heard it
did?
all.
Vince?
Him and Nancy. Vince.
Kevin Sullivan has been accused of it. Poor Kevin Sullivan, rest in peace, has been accused of it. Some of the things that
they killed him?
Yeah, somehow we're called
rubbish.
bullies. Somehow we're called bullies when we defend the fact that I think Chris Benoit was an absolute psycho and what he did was horrible.
Yeah.
We defend Vince McMahon when it's some rich girl who knew him from living in his apartment complex. You know how much money it must take to run into Vince McMahon because you live in the same complex? My God, I've never had that kind of money.
My belief has always been this: the minute you take money, you've lost all credibility.
Yeah, what are we doing here?
Right? The minute you take $1, you have now sold your soul. Regardless what happened to you, you decide to take the money. That is your problem. I mean, we go to the Ring Boy scandal. There's a guy named Lee Cole out there. He's a friend of the show, right? He's the he is the brother of Tom Cole, right? The Ring Boy, right?
He took his life.
Who took his life, but he had brain cancer. Let's not forget that.
That's true.
Tom Cole and Lee Cole took money. Once you take money, you lose any kind of leverage you have. And at this point where they're trying to erase the NDAs and they're trying to now, I don't know if you guys know this, the lawyer for Janelle Grant now is asking for the NDAs to be released so they could see how many people that Vince has paid off. I could care less if Vince McMahon paid off 1 million people. They all took the money. If he's buying sex, that's his choice. This is what you got.
And you raise a sterling point. It's like the negligence market that a lot of attorneys, no fee unless we're successful. They know that if they sue a public authority, certain entities, that they'll pay them off a certain amount not to go through the litigation, right, wrong, or in the middle. That's common knowledge. A lot of lawyers, and I have great respect for that profession. I went to law school for a year before I decided to get an honest job. They work that market because it's easy for them. They have, you tripped on the sidewalk. How come? Well, don't tell them. Don't tell the judge. But I was going like this with my phone. Binga bonga da zinga da zanga. And I wasn't looking where I was going. But you still made 25 grand. Hey.
There you go.
Listen, Baltimore City had a payout. I don't know if they still do. Right, wrong, or indifferent, to make the people go away $300,000. Okay, because they were afraid. Even like if you had eyewitnesses and you had videotape, if you went before a jury might rule in favor of that plaintiff, and then it's going to cost millions. So the lawyers know this, and it's like, okay, just file. Oh, well, what? You got a bruise from the handcuffs, or the officer called you a name? It's like, who the hell's not going to do that?
Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
Fish in.
Am I wrong to believe that I believe a lot of the times with these famous folks, whether it's George Steinbrenner, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Vince McMahon, I believe a lot, or Michael Jackson, I believe a lot of the times the payout that is given is just not even the level of guilt that they're being accused of. It's to make the bad publicity go away. And because they're so wealthy, they can afford to do that. And I
Well,
think that that happens a lot. I don't always feel that a payout is an admission of guilt. I think it's
And
a
you're right.
fine. Here's your money. Go the fuck away.
But
Pardon my French.
my bigger
You
problem
know?
is you sign legal documentation, right? A
Sure.
non-disclosure. And now they're trying to eliminate non-disclosures. I mean,
Right.
there's
Right.
anarchy within our country.
Right.
Nothing is stood
You
by
have people that
anymore.
want to eliminate the Supreme Court. I won't mention names.
Yeah.
Okay? Is our system perfect? Nothing is perfect except if it comes from up there, and he ain't been calling my number lately. But the lawyers will take it because they know it's a gateway to gold. Like Nikita said, the Bronx was the worst. Oh my God, if you sued the city of New
Oh, I
York and the
remember.
Bronx, jackpot like you were pulling a handle in Atlantic
I
City.
remember. I
Wow.
remember the Bronx, especially in the heyday of the Bronx. Boy, do I remember that.
Well,
Look, Mike, I'm out here at Panama City Beach, right? I work where the tourists work. I serve at a liquor store where thousands of people are coming in. We've got multiple high-rise Hiltons, Hyatts, whatever you want to call them. Thousands. Guess how many patrol cars these poor cops have for that entire area?
how many?
3.
Wow.
It's obscene.
Think
How
about
many
that. Think
people,
about what we're asking our law enforcement to do right now. And that's
Jimmy?
this is just a, go ahead.
How many people do you think are there?
I would say thousands. Because don't forget, this is right on the beach. We're down here in the Gulf of Mexico, so we're a tourist spot. And I'm
Right.
working at the booze store right across from the ocean, where
Right.
all the high rises are. They're right there on the beach. There's thousands. I see thousands of people. And there's 3 squad cars for that area.
It
How is
can't be
that?
done. It's
How
like
is that?
having one doctor and 2 nurses in an emergency room on a Saturday night. You can't
It's
And
handle.
wait and see if they defund them. They'll probably have roller skates.
and this
Unbelievable.
is a Republican. They love DeSantis, and he's done a good job for them here. But I'm looking at this and I'm going, how is this an oversight? This is a huge oversight, which
Nah,
surprises me. It
it's not.
surprises me.
So
You know,
so
you're right. It's not, and that's what's the worst part
And
about it.
before I'm going to join you guys because they'll brand me conspiracy theory goof #1. But this bullshit, you can't tell me intelligent people didn't defund the police because they thought things were going to work out beautiful. Please, that's
right.
too
It's a
stupid.
John, Nikita, please. It's a peaceful protest. We just burned the city by accident.
Yeah.
Somebody dropped a cigarette butt. It's a
What
peaceful
the hell,
protest.
man?
There you go.
Jeez.
So
Okay, enough politics.
So Fred, we heard from Nikita, served as an officer of the law, served this country well, thank you. And then he broke into
Thank you, sir.
wrestling and how he shared, his family issues and how wrestling kept him sane through some incredibly difficult times. Fred, I want to understand how do you end up getting into professional wrestling? And again, I can't say it enough. Thank you for serving this country.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor. Thank you so much. I was watching black and white TV. Nowadays they call it what? Channel surfing. And I tuned in on the WABD Channel 5, which went on to become WNYW. It's now the Fox Channel in New York. We lived in the Bronx.
Okay.
And I turn in, and here's Buddy Rogers in the corner, and Haystacks Calhoun is running across the street slamming him. Bobby Davis was Buddy's manager back then. And I was fascinated. And I couldn't get enough of it. Became a wrestling junkie. And the next thing I knew, one day I sat down. Now remember, kayfabe, I didn't even know the word at the time, but it was religion. It was religion.
Sure.
So I took out in 1963 my Esterbrook fountain pen, and I hand wrote a column that I called Wins and Pins New York. All it was were the results of the televised show, and once in a while my father would go with me to Sunnyside Gardens. We'd take the subway. We never owned a car. And I did that. And then when I went into the service, when I enlisted in 1966 in the United States Air Force, I was stationed at Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas, Cowboy Bob Ellis's hometown. And the promoter was Don Lawman Slatton, rest in peace, who worked at Abilene. He'd come in, take the San Angelo Coliseum. His referee was his brother, who went under the gimmick of Dale Stewart. Well, Dale went out of the ring the hard way, split his head open. And the main event was next and last. And they came over to me. The main event was Dory Funk Jr. versus Thunderbolt Patterson. We still talk about it when we see each other. And Dory Funk Sr. had come from Amarillo, and he looked at me and says, "Get your New York ass in the ring. You've been watching this long enough." And I went in. I'll never forget, I was wearing leather-soled shoes. I slid all over the ring. Nikita knows what I mean. That's why you have to have rubber tennis sneaker-like soles on your shoes. And I did the match. I was a kid in a candy store. Then I started dating a female wrestler who worked for Slatton. Her name was Evelyn Stevens. She's still alive. We were hot and heavy. Ended up, I got my orders in June of that year, June of 68, to go over to Nam, fly helicopter rescue during the Tet Offensive. And Evelyn and I we split up. I mean, there was no internet. There was none of this electronic mail, blah, blah, blah. It was a good thing in a way, not that I would have cheated on her, but Evelyn, the man whom she married, cheated on her. And Evelyn gave him some good old Texas justice. She shot him through the heart. She recently got out of prison because she's in her 80s, but that's the way it was back then. And then when I got out, and the day I met this gentleman, Nikita Brezhnikov, who was one of my most trusted friends, and Nikolai Volkov, one of only two people in the wrestling business that has come into my home, and my wife, my good Italian wife, has cooked a dinner for at our table. John's wife, Nikita's wife, I beg your pardon, Nikita's wife knows my wife. They all get along. We talked earlier tonight. And then it grew. The Fred Richards gimmick grew.
Wait, Fred, I gotta cut you off real quick on this.
Sure.
So, did you get a lot of heat for marrying a shitza?
You want to know something?
I know what that is.
No,
Fred.
I didn't. I wouldn't marry a Jewish girl for two reasons. They know two words: I want. A Jewish woman teaches you guilt. An Italian woman teaches you shame. There is a difference, I kid you not. But we've been married for 40 years. I got it right. And then I got involved with the NWA through the late Howard Brody. Rest in peace, my friend. I became an officer in the corporation. Got to know a lot of the guys, got involved in the promoting end of it. Nikolai was one of our favorites. It was easy to bring him to New York. He was out of Baltimore. I mean, you could drive it even if you stayed within the speed limit on the turnpike. You could do it in a few hours. And that's when I met Nikita Brezhnikov. Wonderful, talented, dedicated, focused human being. They never stepped out of gimmick. Some of my best matches were when Nikolai Volkov teamed with the Iron Sheik. Both of you rest in peace. And we went against two other guys that are not with us, the bushwhackers or sheep herders, whatever you call them. They gave me the business like nobody I ever knew. But the star thing came right after 9/11. Howard Brody had thrown a show in Florida. They asked me to speak on 9/11. To this day, it's very emotional for me. Not everybody who was there got off as easy as I did. I've led many commemorations. I will never call it a celebration or an anniversary. I call it a commemoration of the 2,977 people who never knew what hit them and the others that died later. It took 17 years for the prostate cancer to manifest itself in me. By the grace of God, a very talented radiation oncologist in New Jersey, Dr. Sang Sim, cured it. And I thank God for that every day. But what I saw on 9/11, Hollywood can never do justice. When you see people either jumping or free falling for more than 100 stories, and then you look at what's left on the pavement on Vesey Street or on West Street or on Church Street, you don't forget it. That's why I am very, at this point, I'm not going to segue into politics. I'm very concerned about the border because anybody who thinks it can't happen again, maybe they said the same thing after Pearl Harbor. At least Pearl Harbor was a military target. When those planes went down, and I've been to all the sites, I've been to Shanksville, Pennsylvania, I've certainly been to the Pentagon, and every September 11th, I will go to Manhattan. I was tapped to do my presentation called Behind the Fence, is still part of the permanent exhibit of September 11th at the New York State Museum in Albany. I was overcome with that. I've been interviewed a lot. So let me sum it up by this. How did I get there? Well, at that time, I was detailed to work in the Rudolph Giuliani administration. I was in the MTA. I started as a bus driver in 1973, worked my way up. Best thing bus business ever got me. One day, my wife walked on the bus, and the rest was history. But we were putting in the bus lanes in Manhattan. Giuliani was hands on. We had a 9 a.m. meeting in 7 World Trade Centers. September 11th was busy. The weather was nice. It was a primary election day. And if the number 5 Lexington Avenue train, I used to take the bus in to Port Authority, if that train hadn't been 8 minutes late, I wouldn't be here with you 3 good gentlemen right now because I was supposed to be inside. And if you don't think that makes you meet God, you're wrong. You're wrong. It saved my life. I pray every day. I'm not a pious man. I've been in churches more than synagogues, but I pray every day for the souls, not only of the people who died, the people who are irreparably crippled, who suffer from heart, but for their families who will forever have an empty seat at the dinner table. And if that's not enough to make us tighten up, my God, what does it take? Now, before I start bawling, I'll yield the floor. Thank you for asking, sir.
Fred,
Fred,
Fred
you
is,
were a hero because you stayed.
I'm no hero. I'm Fred Rubenstein.
But you stayed and you dug in there, man. You tried to save other
For 6
lives.
months, I was out there. Remember, in 1973, when the Trade Center opened, asbestos was state of the art. For the first 3 days we were out there helping people, we didn't even have those flimsy masks people wore for COVID. We had nothing, no respirators, nothing. And when we got one significant moment, we were in front of the old J&R Music World on Park Row. My alma mater, Pace University, is there. And we had all that horrible gray dust on us. And like we all just got hit with a DDT, we realized that this was more than construction debris. It was human ash.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't make you cry, no matter how bad you think you are, then God left something out of you. For weeks, we were finding business cards, Wallace, all the way over on the South Street Seaport on the other side of Manhattan Island. And that's why Rudy closed off Lower Manhattan south of Houston Street. We'd go through the Holland Tunnel at breakneck speeds. And we didn't know until years later, just like Agent Orange in Vietnam, when these things started to manifest themselves. But for the 6 months I was out there, you dig, you come up with a finger, you come up with an arm, you go over to St. Paul's Cathedral at Vesey Street and Broadway and see these heartbreaking pictures. Have you seen this person? Somebody's father, somebody's son, somebody's daughter. People who lived a short lifespan and had it wiped out by people who were in this country illegally for 8 years, ate our McDonald's, experienced our women, everything, our entertainment, but they stayed focused for what they knew would be a suicide mission. If that doesn't scare the bejesus out of you, then what would? That's the facts. It's not my version. It's the facts.
it is the facts. And as someone who has served, and as someone who had to endure the removal of the damage done through the hatred of terrorism, does it disappoint you? Because to me, my father raised me on old school. My grandparents, unfortunately, had to deal with Hitler, and I was raised adopted, but I was raised Jewish in a Jewish household, and I could not help but shake. I couldn't shake on September 12th while everybody suddenly became patriotic for what to me seemed like a whole 2 weeks, maybe tops, after 9/11. I thought to myself, I looked at the hijacker list and I saw 19 of the 22's origin was Saudi Arabia. And I couldn't help but think to myself, if Churchill and FDR had been alive today, meaning September 12th, 2001, would we have turned Saudi Arabia into a goddamn parking lot? And my answer keeps saying yes. Am I wrong to think that we've allowed a movement to continue like a virus to this point after all you've given up? I know Mike has served. Nikita risked his life every day on the streets to try to keep what I think should be protected society. The human race needs rules. Too bad if you don't like it. It's the facts. We are an aggressive, violent species. So am I wrong to feel this way
You
about the
couldn't be
country?
more right if you tried. You could not be more right. You are word perfect in everything that you say. It sounds great. Oh, we're going to burn this. Oh, we're going to do that. Civilization cannot exist that way. Your grandparents, I lost family. I never met my father's family. My
Right.
father's people came from Russia. My
Right.
mother's from Romania.
Mine
I
too,
heard,
oddly
saw
enough,
pictures and
Russia.
I heard
Yeah.
about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And I know every race has felt it. Races, religions, beliefs, they felt it. You are 1,000% right. I say bravo.
I got to tell you, Jimmy, when I booked these two
Thank
gentlemen,
you.
right?
Thank you.
I knew a substantial amount about Nikita and what a wonderful book he had written.
Yeah.
Did not know much about
Yeah.
Fred, but oh my
Yeah.
God, these are
Well,
two
there you
two
have it.
true American heroes that are above us on these pictures
Yeah,
on this
in the
screen,
pecking
right?
order, I would say that a police officer and a man who not only served this country but had to deal with the 9/11 post stuff. I did have a friend that had to deal with a lot of it, and I would get the phone calls. I know he is wrecked mentally forever. No one asked for that day. I hate when I hear conspiracy theories about that day. Uh,
Oh,
I don't
rubbish.
find I don't find it that far to imagine that there are uh, Arabic backgrounds, to be fair, that want a tiny little speck of the Middle East absolutely obliterated. It's not above my realm. I've witnessed it. So I'm sorry that selective racial hatred seems to be open season on my poor parents and their families and the way I was raised. I feel I was raised properly. Now, I may look like Shawn Michaels who needs to go to the dentist, but that's a whole nother story. I do feel morally I was raised the right way, and my father always believed that there's two different types of good and evil. And oddly enough, he used Martin Luther King and Malcolm X as the two. And he said that Martin Luther King tried the right way. He tried to be a human being about it. He really did his
Mm.
best. Malcolm X looks to piss people off and cause division. He's like, there is no in between. They can romanticize him, and they probably will as we get more bitter as a society. But I do think my father had the right idea.
His wisdom is irrefutable. God rest him.
Yeah, for
People
sure.
have to remember it's us. We all share this earth. And when the
Mhm.
enemies come, they don't care what color we are.
Right. Do
They
you
don't
think
care
that
what our
any of us?
religion. They
Do you
want to
think
wipe
that
us
any of
out.
I
You
got
think that any of our
back. I'm
families
sorry.
cared what color Adolf Hitler was? Adolf Hitler could have been purple. I would have wanted him gone. I don't give a shit what his color was. He was evil as could be. Mikey?
Guys, I have a quick question here. So, Fred, um, it seems like you had a pretty close relationship with your father. Did you both share the love of wrestling?
It brought my father into it. Back in those days, under the old New York State Athletic Commission, they could not admit anyone under the age of 14. So my father had to go to the box office. It's like Nikita is a police officer, can tell you. Some people went by the letter of the law rigidly, and others, that was the day of the $2 payoff. And if you gave the guy $2, well, how old are you, son? $2. Happy 21st birthday. I mean, I wasn't
Wow.
even in puberty yet. And that's the way it was done. I mean, we called it the art of the schmear. It could get you out of running a stop sign, depending on who the precinct guys were. My father developed a love of it when he got to meet certain people. When I was a made man and I got to go backstage at the Garden and other places, he actually had two good conversations with Vince Sr., who used to stand in front of exit 77 at the old Madison Square Garden. That's where Vince Sr. held court. And then they had the Holland Hotel, the one who took me under his wing the most. and whom my father adored and whom I miss was Arnold the Golden Boy Skolin. Arnold just liked me. He brought me up to the shows at the County Center in White Plains, New York. The night that he knocked out Wild Red Berry at the Long Island Arena in Comac in 10 seconds. He ran across the ring. Arnold gave him a forearm. The ref came in, did his 10 count. That was the match, and the place went wild. It's one thing to work hard. It's another thing to work smart.
But there's another guy, Fred. He was part of Carlson's Raiders in the military. He was
That's
a
right.
real legitimate tough son of a bitch.
Arnold?
That's right. And
Arnold
he
School.
never, he was
Wow.
built like a brick, you know what? And his
Wow.
wife, Betty, was a wonderful woman. Gorilla Monsoon, Gino Morella, when I found out that he could do more than make sounds, he went to Ithaca University. How did I find that out? He walks into the dressing room in the garden one night and he had his class ring on. And we started talking. And by that point, I became trusted. My first feature article for the Ring magazine, you can see the old style Hunt and Peck typewriter, was on Gene DeBeck, better known as the Magnificent Maurice, who teamed with handsome Johnny Barron with the Grand Wizard, the late Ernie Roth, as their manager after Bobby Davis stepped aside. And you got to know these guys. George Man Mountain Cannon. That was kayfabe. When I was taken downstairs at Sunnyside Garden, it's like I crossed through the pearly gates. There had to be a level. I was 14, 15. Don Curtis, the late Don Curtis, who used to team with Mark Lewin. I still keep in touch with his wife, Dottie, who's not far from where the Good Pharaoh is down in Florida. She's in her 80s and getting up there. I keep in touch with a lot of them. A lot of memories, a lot of good times, a lot of simpler times.
My father raised me on, I get, because my father was born in the early 30s, and he told me all about the birth of television and how if you were the one guy on the block that had the TV, you were the most popular. And he told me just how important wrestling was. It sounds to me that you guys came possibly a little bit after him, but what's your take on who my father says that without this man, you never would have had a Ric Flair, a Hulk Hogan, a WrestleMania, a show, the E in WWE entertainment that they call it today, without a man called Gorgeous George. Do you have some memories of Gorgeous George, you guys?
Sure, I do. And his valet and the controversies, just like Buddy Rogers, supposedly with the fabulous moolah.
Right.
Gorgeous George, he was a master showman. He was the Broadway theater come to the squared circle. And again, it's what I said. The crowd responded when he'd comb his hair. Back then, you used to put wild root cream oil or broom cream in your hair, and it had the DA, the duck's ass in the back, and he had the crowd going crazy. And the bell hadn't even sounded yet. You got the Eduardo Carpentiers, you got the Antonino Rockers who would kick people in the face.
Of course.
Everybody came in there with a new gimmick. That's what it was about. It wasn't just a tits and ass festival. Not that I
Right.
have anything against those two anatomical protrusions, but
Okay.
they because you never could have done it on television back then.
Right.
And who was one of the first big announcers? People forget, before the Ray Morgans, before the Eric Pages, it was the Chris Show host, Dennis James. Remember
And
Dennis
Steve
James?
Allen.
Steve Allen.
Yes.
A lot of them made the bump because wrestling was watched. It was free. And what was it there to do? To set up the arena shows. One of the
Right.
first times they ever did a title change, and they did it out of the Capitol Arena. It was supposed to be Anthony Naraka and Johnny Valentine against the Fabulous Kangaroos with Red Berry. And Rocker couldn't make it. So Cowboy Bob Ellis stepped in. And I remember talking to him about it. He was going against the Alaskan, Jay York, down in San Angelo. That was Ellis's hometown. I think he's still alive. He was 95, Ellis. I'd love to see him. I keep in touch with the one I dated, Evelyn Stevens. She's still alive. She's in her mid-80s. A lot of them are still around.
Well, I have both of you here. I gotta ask you, and I'll admit this is more Mike, but I do love when Mike suggests that I ask a question like this. You guys obviously both being old school. How do you feel about how do you feel about fans like me and Mike we've been called this. How do you feel about fans like me and Mike infiltrating the sport you love so much? To
That's
be able to
great.
be just be a fan and have a show and have the nerve to have an opinion that Bully Ray doesn't seem to like. Any thoughts on?
Jimmy, it's a different world. We talked about it earlier.
That's right.
After the internet, it's gone. Everything is out in the open. That's great. You should have a show where you talk. Because listen, I look at a lot of sites. I got my page, and people are pretty good about it. But I see other things. Well, Strongbow was Italian. It's like, who gives a fuck? Did they get the memo on Santa Claus
You make
yet?
a good marinara.
It is kind of funny though. You gotta
I'm
admit.
going to supplement what Nikita just said.
It's
There was an
funny.
old song. I have the 45 in my basement, well preserved, sung by the legendary Petula Clark. The name of the
Okay.
song is "It's a Sign of the Times."
Yeah, I
And if
love
you
that.
listen to the lyrics,
Okay.
they speak to
Okay.
exactly what you're speaking to. And it will
Right.
continue to evolve, like we talked about earlier in this wonderful podcast.
Nikita, I want to come back to your family life, right? You had spoken about your father a little bit. Especially when me and Jimmy started when we were younger, it was you kind of like didn't want people to know you were a wrestling fan, right? Because it was kind of looked down at.
We're talking 1982 or so. When
Yeah,
we
right.
First
You know,
met. When we
but
first
I guess my question to you, Nikita, is this: did your father give you a lot of shit for watching wrestling?
Oh yeah, yeah. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. He thought it was bullshit. He just had no time for it.
Yeah.
Luckily, in my market, it was on Saturdays at 4 p.m. So it didn't really. He was doing his own thing. Didn't interfere with anything. But no, he didn't have any use for it. Anything I liked anyway, forget about it. But
Jeez.
for me, those guys, I knew if I could tell Chief what was going on, Strongbow, he'd come here and kick this bastard's ass for me because he wouldn't tolerate that. And when we talked about it years later, Chief had tears in his eyes. He said, "Man, I love my father. I'm sorry you went through that, Nikita. That's terrible." It's like, you know what? I didn't know any better. I just thought that's the way it was.
Right.
But it wasn't fun. It was shit. It was horrible. But I came in a circle of friends. I was the only one who had parents that were together. Everybody else was separated or on their way to a divorce. I wish my mother would have divorced the bastard, but unfortunately he was there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you found something you loved and you persevered and you formed your own identity, and here you are talking to us.
I mean,
so much for him.
I'll share a story, and then we got to get to what we were here to bring about the 25th anniversary, right? Of the Heroes Wrestling.
Okay.
Right. I mean, that's why we're here.
Is
But
that why we're here?
am I wrong? Let me ask you this, Nikita. Am I wrong for this? So my father used to give me shit about watching wrestling too all the time, right? And I remember. You remember? But remember the Daily News would always have these little captions about wrestling, right? Because they were embarrassed to talk about wrestling too.
Yeah,
right?
they stick it in a little corner.
But at the time, there was an article, very small one, where Jimmy Snuka gets arrested in a hotel room, but he ends up, I think, killing like 4 dogs, beating up 4 cops. And I might be exaggerating, but I remember seeing that article and I ripped it out and I go to my father. You see, these are the guys. They'll kick anyone's ass. Was I wrong for being proud of a cokehead like Jimmy Snuka attacking policemen and killing animals?
Patera and Saito did the same thing in Minnesota.
To a bunch of cheeseburgers.
They had to pull guns on them. Otherwise, because they even maced Saito and it just pissed him off, you know? It's like
did Haku really bite somebody's nose off? Haku?
Yes.
What is going on?
All right, wait.
Here?
You know what? There's so much.
Don't remind me of Japan. That was me over there.
Oh my God!
I thought he was going to show me
Nikita was a big part of it.
In the nose, but
Fred, there's so much to talk about. This is incredible. Fred, you said you were part of the board of the NWA, right? At some point, right?
I was a corporate officer of the NWA up to the last incarnation of it when Bob Trowbridge, a fine man, whom we made the executive director, when then Bill Behrens, all of those guys, Alvin Minnick stepped aside. The NWA, in my opinion, is dead now, but that's another story for another time.
Well, let me
hear
ask
that, Billy Corgan? Do you hear that, Billy Corgan?
Let me ask you this question. Iron Claw came out. Good movie. Didn't like it the first time I saw it. After seeing it 800 times, now I love it, right?
It's growing on me. Okay.
What did you have the chance to meet the Von Erich boys, and did you have a chance to work with Fritz Von Erich? And did that movie portray, if you did that movie portray Fritz properly?
I think it did. I got to know Fritz because his main referee and partner was Branko Lubic. Branko used to manage Angelo Paffo Sr., father, as you know, of Lanny and Randy. All three are gone now. Fritz was a complicated guy. He was like the weather. The tragedy that happened in that family is eerie. There's no other way to say it. I worked in a tag match when I went to their little sportatorium in the Dallas Fort Worth area. I was in the service at the time. I really wasn't supposed to be there. I had to get a pass and drive the close to 300 miles from San Angelo to the Metroplex, as they called it. Bronco was friendly, but he was the only ref I know who moved slower than I did. And it was interesting to watch. And we talk about the old days when the great Puffo was still active. Uh, I think the picture, I'm going to say that with me, based on what I knew, there were things that were not brought out. There were things that should not have been brought out. Oh my God, I need dental work in that picture. But the I think it was a good effort. I haven't had a chance to see the Mr. McMahon series yet, but I know that I want to. I've read other people's opinions. I'm old school. I'm like Nikita. We make up our own minds.
Mm.
And please don't forget Dennis Carluzzo for the NWA.
You can't forget Dennis Carluzzo. Rest in peace. I owe him a lot. Dennis, for as controversial as he might have been, gave a lot of big names their start. A lot
Yes.
of people whose names are everyday words. Once they went up into the mainstream promotions, they couldn't mention Dennis. Dennis never got his just deserves. He was robbed of the best years of his life when he rolled off a gurney in a hospital and sustained a severe concussion. I keep in touch with his son, Mark. I keep in touch with his daughter, Missy. I keep in touch with his ex-wife, Debbie. I love Dennis. Did we have our outs? Show me anybody who says they haven't had their outs in wrestling, and now you'll really see a liar. But I love the guy, and I owe him a lot. And his kid, Mark, is okay. He's married now. He's the spitting image of his father, spitting image of his dad. His dad was a diabetic. He didn't have an easy life. He tried to make money in insurance, but he had a love affair with wrestling that nobody could break.
Wow.
Nobody could break. When Nikita came up, when you were with Dennis, it just didn't stop. It didn't stop. He worked in all these little venues in New Jersey. We branched out at one point into Maryland. He had people who he tried to do business with. We'd fly down. What the hell was the name of the worker? Oh, who was the one? Help me out. Who played the vampire? With
Gangrel.
Ian Rotten. Ian Rotten. We
Rotten.
walked down, and he had the guy who was. I can see his face. Gangrel.
Yeah.
We did that. Many a drive, we'd rent a car, and some of those drives on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, Nikita, he could have used your shield because I think he got decorated for speeding more than anybody I ever knew. But true to form, Dennis, let's just say that he had this license and that license. Leave it at that.
He gave me my break. I was the first guy. He was the first person I ever worked for. Was Dennis Carluzzo. And when an NWA show
was supposed to be on that pay-per-view, him too.
Nikita, before we get into the Heroes of Wrestling, I got to ask you, here you are, police officer, you grew up on wrestling. You finally get this opportunity. What was that feeling like?
Surreal. I felt like Lou Gehrig, the luckiest son of a bitch on the face of the earth. It's like, I should be paying you, not paying me, because I'm working with guys. The first day, Dennis's show, I went in with Nikolai unannounced, worked against Duke Drosy as Duke the Dumpster, and then a double shot against Jim Neidhart that night. And I'm looking at, and we talked before the match, of course, and I'm looking at Neidhart in a ring, and I'm like, I hope the fuck he knows what's going on, because he looks like he's going to kill me, and it's like, holy shit, do I belong here or what? But it's like, yes, if you didn't belong there, they would have crippled you and threw you out of the damn ring. So it was a dream come true, because a lot of people say, well, my God, you must have been dreaming of this your whole life. And I'm like, are you crazy? I never thought I could be doing that. I'm just lucky. I was in the right place at the right time, went in with Nikolai, was able to keep it going. Otherwise, like I said earlier, I'd have been sat down, but I never could have imagined that I would do that. I'm grateful to God every day for it.
Mike, real quick, because we have these two here, it's always puzzled me. Vince McMahon has always seemed to be very smart in almost everything he does. He's ahead of the curve. And what I've never understood is he purchased WCW, for example. They're in his library. He owns them. ECW is in the library. Mid South is in the library. This is in the library. That's in the library. Is there any reason why Vince McMahon never thought to himself to purchase the NWA? Because as far as I'm concerned, historically, even after the few years of WCW, whatever run they had, every time I still look at the NWA title, and Mike, I'm sure you'll somewhat agree with me, it is 1982 all over again, and that belt still means the most in the world as far as the magazines go, whether I liked it or not, because I didn't. We're East Coast kids, so we wanted to see Bob Backlund consistently up at the top of Mr. Apter's rankings and stuff. Why did Vince McMahon never get that out of the way and just purchase the NWA? Because I'm not too thrilled with
I got
what
to
the
be rude.
NWA is
You
today.
don't have to purchase what you already own. I have the document because I
What
was given the documents. Vince McMahon owned the NWA. He just allowed it to branch off. They made an informal deal with Howard Brody and others, but they owned the rights to it.
they
That
do
is
to this,
fact that I can prove.
Fred, they do to this day because it's not Billy Corgan.
That I don't know. But I do know that when it branched off, when did this happen? It happened with Lou Thez and Buddy Rogers in '63. That's what
Right,
led to them bringing Bruno in. How did they
right.
bring Bruno in? Do you remember the story? Nikita
Sure,
remembers it.
I
They
remember
went to
all
the
of
phone
that,
book.
but the key point is that the moment that Shaden Douglas drops it into the garbage pail in ECW, it is no longer in the eyes of the fans the NWA title. It has not meant the same, and it breaks my heart to say that, but that's the truth. And
It is
that's
the
why
truth.
I'm so confused why Vince never saw the value in its history, because you're right. Going back to Lou Thez, going through the heyday of when Terry was champion, when Dory was champion, when Jack was champion, and then it follows into all the greatness that followed with Harley, and it goes into Ric Flair. This is history that shouldn't really be ignored. All I'm saying is that you have any inside information on how shocked I didn't think to purchase this company. Now, if you say you have documents, what does that mean? I'm confused because Billy Corgan, the famous lead vocalist of the Smashing Pumpkins, is supposedly the owner of the NWA right now. So does
The
Vince
own
still truly, does he
as
still
as I
truly own the?
understand it, me and one of my dearest friends on God's green earth, Chris Ronquillo,
Okay,
who used the Tony Brooklyn gimmick, promoted in Texas. We had the document when we got the brand name, when we got the brand from Trowbridge, who was the executive director, when we settled out of court, we got the archives and we had the letters where Brody acknowledged it. Could that have changed when Ron Quillo and I dropped out? The answer
right.
is anything can change. I wasn't
Okay,
involved in that transaction.
okay.
I'm not copying a plea. I'm just telling you the
No,
chronology of
I
events as I
understand,
know
but
them.
you are telling me that at one point Vince did own the NWA. Bottom
I am
line,
telling you that Vince Sr. owned the NWA.
that's
Yes, he
interesting.
did.
Senior
And that's
did.
how they
Okay,
settled that whole thing, which started with Fez and
okay,
Rogers. And when
okay.
they went to the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, when
Right,
it was born in Madison Square Garden with Bruno Sammartino, who they got because the New
gotcha.
York phone directory showed so many, same way Pedro Morales came in because of the phone book. We're going to sell
Right,
tickets. Arriba Latino. And it did.
right. Now
Amazing.
you being in the first row, obviously I won't get the chance to ask this question to anybody but you. 1963, and here comes the 48 seconds. Being in the first row, to your eyes, you obviously have a great point of view. How brutal, for real, was that 48 seconds? Because from what I understand, it's a backbreaker and a bear hug and a good night, Irene.
Over the shoulder backbreaker.
Right. How
That's right.
painful, correct. How painful did it seem to look to you Did Rogers make some real serious squealing noises? You're close enough. I'll never have the chance to ask somebody who was closer. So what do
And
you
I'll tell
remember?
you, and I feel embarrassed. I forget the author's name because I was consulted on this. He wrote a book recently. What happened is they came out, as you gentlemen know, everything happens what's the magic number is three. So they went into the arm locks, the whole thing. Bruno whips Buddy into the rope, picks him up in the bear hug. Rogers is selling it. He's doing his job. Bruno did his job. He turned to all four sides of the ring. Eye rake. He drops him. Oh my God, sells it, sells it, sells it. Same thing again. Whips him into the rope, picks him up. Sells it, sells it, sells it. Same thing. Whips him into the rope the third time. Jack Lutz, the referee, I'm sorry, Eddie Gersh was in perfect position. Lifts him, as Nikita said, into the backbreaker, swinging him around. Rogers is selling it in agony. 48 seconds, Johnny Addy announces the winner, a new champion, after Georgie Brown rings the bell, and the place goes crazy. They sold it that way. Now, there were a lot of claims that Buddy Rogers went into the ring and was working sick, that he had a temperature. To my knowledge and what I got after speaking to Gersh and others, that is just, again, a story like you hear about Manny Fernandez and him being stolen valor. To me, it has no foundation in truth. But it was, again, what did we talk about before? Wild Red Berry and Arnold Skolin. 10 seconds, and they set the Long Island Arena on fire. Well, these guys did it, and they had a tag match after that because that's how all the cards at the Garden closed. They either went to curfew or it was a double disqualification. They never went to a straight finish. But Buddy sold it. He sold it major league. Remember, Buddy came down to the ring. None of them had robes. Buddy had his trademark white hand towel that he carried with him and his strut. The man from Camden, New Jersey, Harmon Road, rest in peace, died when he was 71 years of age. And Bruno, who we all know, died not overly long ago. But that's what I saw in row one. And certain things are indelibly etched in your long-term memory. That's one of them.
Looking at Bruno Sammartino for the very first time that night, I would assume in person, did you know right away that you were looking at what I like to call aura? Oh my God, this is the guy. Like, I saw it the first time I laid my eyes on Hulk Hogan when he was a heel and came out with Freddie Blassie. I knew right away that one of these things is not like the others. And that's exactly what. Did you have that feeling when you looked at Bruno that night the first time?
When Bruno came down the aisle, when he came down the runway, surrounded by the same cadre of special police officers, he was a brick shithouse. His chest was so broad. Everything about there was an ounce of blubber. Boy, did he stay away from the macaroni. There wasn't an ounce. At that point, English was his second language. But let me tell you something you
He
may not
learned it.
know, and I don't even know if you can find it online. They had worked before about a year ago.
Okay.
And of course, Buddy won with his trademark figure four leg lock at Sunnyside Gardens, just like Tony Altamari had. And the Sicilians, Lou Albano, who was a good friend of my wife. I knew Lou. He used to be a taxi cab driver in Mount Vernon, New York, Lou Albano, before he turned into wrestling.
Imagine getting picked up for a ride by Lou Albano.
So
Mike.
wait, now I got to ask this question then. So Fred,
Right.
are you telling me that Bruno lied about making Buddy do business in that ring at that time? It was just a work, and he kept that story?
I can't say one way or another because I wasn't privy to any dialogue. Remember, at that point, I hadn't become one of the trusted guys. I was there as a paying customer next to my
Right.
father.
But from when you were looking at, though, it looked like that it was just
It went over. It went over me.
Oh, I'm sure.
The noise in the garden was unbelievable.
I'm sure it went over, but I was wondering from your vantage point, how real did it look? Because as Nikita's book says, when it was real. My real question is, was that real? Because it's been said that to this day, Buddy was not really truly aware he was supposed to lose that night, and Bruno took care of business. Is there any validity? Is there validity?
I will put it the way I saw it and the way I believe it to this minute, with my hand raised.
Okay.
It was 100% kosher. They put it over.
I got you.
When he got him up, remember, Nikita told you with accurate detail how he was bouncing him in that backbreaker. I saw the way his back was bent over Bruno's shoulder. My God, that had to hurt.
Oh, yeah.
And there's only one thing you can do is wave
No
it.
doubt.
And Eddie Gersh knew what he had to do, and they rang the bell, and that was that. And
And
his
you got to
views
remember
mattered.
a little bit more of the history. Buddy
Sure.
Rogers was part of the reason Bruno got screwed and had to just work in Toronto. He got him suspended. He worked with
Right.
promoters back
Right.
then.
Right.
They didn't
Correct.
like him. And Bruno
Mhm.
told
Mhm.
years later, and Bruno was
Mhm.
an honorable man. He said, I hated that bastard. And he
Yeah.
said, I went in there and I told him, do your best because I'm going to do mine. And he went
Right.
in there and let him have it. And I
Right.
believe Bruno. I do.
Right. Well, Mike, it's the mark of a great champion. We used to wonder why Bob Backlund, who we couldn't stand, held the belt for almost 6 years. When we got to finally interview and meet him, we realized that in real life, if you dared shoot on Bob Backlund, you were going to get a beating. Like Ric Flair said to him, please don't hurt me.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I'll leave it at this.
So,
When I said when
you know.
Graham really didn't want to lose the belt to him,
Right.
he said, Billy Graham was strong, but I was much stronger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also feel that without Gorgeous George, there is no superstar
No.
Billy Graham. So I'm cool. I'm very happy we at least
All
talked
right.
about him.
25-year anniversary, Heroes of Wrestling. We need to hear the story.
We have to.
Obviously, without being insulting,
No!
it was
This
not
is-
the experience that we all
Hell.
thought it was going to be. Where does it come from? How does it start?
man.
And where does it go wrong?
The worst pay-per-view in the history of wrestling.
Oh.
What an honor.
Match in the
Yeah,
history
but
of wrestling.
here's the mess, guys. Here's the messed up thing, though. Why do I still watch it and get a kick out of it? What is wrong with me? There's got to be something wrong with me that I
No.
find it.
No, Jimmy. It's a little bit different because
Yeah, it's way different, to be very honest.
no. Now you got to know, and this is what pisses me off about this fucking Meltzer and everybody else that had some bad mouthing of it.
Yeah.
What did you think? These guys were coming out in their prime? This
No, of course
was,
not.
and when Nicola and I did a promo for a local news station in Baltimore, the news anchor hit the nail on the head. So he said, Nikolai, so this is a senior store for wrestling. It's like, yes, you're not going to see these guys in their prime, but
Right.
look, all
Right.
the years, because in one of the descriptions in the Torch, it said, she could hardly walk. Yeah, you know why? Because he gave his body up, asshole,
Yeah.
all those
Yeah.
years, and he
right.
did have a problem. But this was an opportunity. It's not just about the money. These guys performed, and they wanted another chance. And actually, Bill Stone was going to give them that chance until we'll get into it, what happened. But it's like, what did you think they were going to do? Run down the aisle, leap over the top rope, and start cartwheeling? Come on.
I've never been one to block my true feelings on anything, and I respect the hell out of both of you. So coming from a classic Mark fan, whatever term you want to use for me, I watched that back in '99, and everything that you're pointing out, I've heard people. None of that bothered me. Here's the bottom line. If Jake the Snake doesn't start acting like his snake is his penis and doesn't come out and do what he does, this would have been just another pay-per-view that tried to show you that once upon a time there were some great wrestlers. Enjoy them while they're still doing something. But I feel like Jake is the one that ruined the whole fucking thing. Am I wrong to say that?
No, because I tell
You'd
you
be
what,
more right if you tried.
I flew with Bill Stone back to Baltimore because he was going to DC, I was going to Baltimore, and the pre-show meeting, he said, "Look, I don't want none of this X at the crotch. I don't want to hear suck it. Just do what you used to do. I don't want to do any of that vulgar stuff. Let's just be old school wrestling." And that was, everybody understood it. I don't know what the hell happened with Roberts, but you saw him walking to the ring, and it is described accurately in some of these old reports. He was staggering. He almost didn't make it up the ramp. And then when he grabbed the snake and looked like he was working with his penis, it's like, oh, and I was in the production truck when it was like, oh my God, no. And they tried to cut it, but of course, you can't catch a bullet once it's fired. Boom, too late.
Right.
They had 11 minutes of dead air. If it wasn't rest in peace for King Kong Bundy, he came in there and he saved a lot of it. Nikita couldn't be more right if he tried. We had talked with Bill Stone. This was a beginning. They only drew a 29,000 buy rate, but it was something to build upon. Everybody else did their job, goddammit. But when Jake did that, and when Mike Henry was made the scapegoat, that was one of the biggest injustices. Mike Henry did his job. For every dollar they paid him, he owned 10. Quote me on that.
Absolutely. And now look, they had T-shirts, hats, which I own.
Right.
I have them. Any other indie promotion do that? No, this was going to be something that, and that's why they made Lou Albano the commissioner. This was going to be something
Yep.
that was going to carry on, maybe bi-monthly, maybe monthly. But
Look,
it's like you're not going to be competing with Stone Cold and The Rock. And
yeah, okay, but Nikita, I think for fans that don't know about this event, right? Jimmy and I obviously do.
Yeah.
How does it start? Who comes up with this idea, and what is the ultimate plan? And who are the players? How does this all come about?
Well, the ultimate plan, they were going to get Nick Bockwinkel, but that fell through. I'm not
Now,
sure
Bill.
why.
Now, to Nikita, to make it clear, Bill Stone was basically the Vince McMahon of what he was trying to build. Correct?
Well, he was coming in out of the cold. He was trying to get this promotion to go. So, okay,
Right.
put Vince's title on him. He was writing the checks.
I'm
This
just
was the
saying
money
he's
man.
the guy. He's the guy behind the curtain.
Yes, he definitely was calling the shots.
Okay, so
He relied, like Fred said, well, Mike O'Brien, right, was the booker.
okay,
That's
Right, Fred?
correct.
Right, Mike O'Brien. Now, he was a young guy out of Connecticut. He had experience. He knew what he was doing. But then when it comes time to do the main event, Jim Neidhart says, I'm not going out. I want another $1,000. And it's like,
Yep.
what the fuck?
Blackmail.
What are we going to do now?
Well,
And he's like, and I'm not doing the job
ultimately-
because I'm getting ready to go back to WWF. And it's like, Bundy stepped in and said, I'll do it. I don't give a fuck. I'll do it. Chris was a stand-up guy. You got to give him that. He definitely,
Yes, he is.
hey, look, he started out at, a lot of guys did, but he started out the low rung of the ladder. The Von Erichs really brought him in and made it something. He was ready to step in, and he did. And then it was sort of.
Wait a minute. So you guys have this pay-per-view, Neidhart's in the main event, and right before it, he says, I want another $1,000.
Yep.
Like
Yes,
the
he
ultimate
did.
like the Ultimate Warrior before SummerSlam.
Absolutely.
I won't
And
shake the ropes otherwise.
They had
Right.
to write him a check, and it was like, okay, but I'm not doing the job. He said, I'm not.
Did you guys have advanced contracts with the talent you would sign? Like you'll be here for the
Yes.
next year, yada yada.
Not a
That's
year, just for that night.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a
just for
per
that
diem
night.
contract. Bundy was a stand-up guy. To this day, his brother, who's still alive, they have a used car lot in Sewell, New Jersey. And if you go in there, it's like a museum. But Bundy was a stand-up guy. He was friendly. He was the second guy, other than Nikolai, who came into this house. His wife Joyce, who he was married to at the time,
Joyce, yeah.
nice little Filipino woman, got along well with my wife Jenny. He was okay.
Who was in, if I can ask, who was in charge of the locker room that night? Because I have to be
Mike
honest.
O'Brien.
I mean, how does somebody not walk over to Jake and say, "You are not going out there, and I'll fucking knock you out if you think you are"? Like, didn't anybody like realize his condition? Was everybody high that night? I mean, I know you, Mike. I'm pretty sure you would have been like Jimmy. The whole show's going to go down the shitter if we let this drunken, wasted guy go out there right now.
Yeah, sure.
Did anybody talk to him? Anybody? There was big names. You guys had. Look, on the surface again, as a wrestling fan, I was not expecting a cartwheel fest. I knew who these guys were. I grew up loving them, so I knew what I was going to be seeing. Nothing bothered me except Jake. We still talk about it because of Jake. You poor gentlemen have to defend yourselves. Maybe that's too strong a word because it's not your fault that this happened, but my God, where was that veteran to walk up to him and go, Jake, you're fucking crocked. Stay in the back. You failed tonight. And no, you're not getting paid either.
Nobody. I don't look. They were last. They went on last. Everybody else that was done was off doing their own thing, heading for the casino because that's where it was. Casino Magic, which is gone. It's obliterated off the map due to the storms. But no, nobody that I saw walked up to Jake Roberts and said, "Hey, look, this isn't a good idea."
That's right.
I don't think Mike O'Brien felt strong enough that he would get in the face with this legend.
Well,
that
that's
wasn't going to happen.
I mean, honestly, and look, I don't know. I'm not in the business. We talk about the business, but that's why I learned from gentlemen like yourselves. The first thing I thought when you told me who the booker was is I'm sure he had local independent experience. I'm sure he did. But I'm thinking to myself right away, he's got some big sharks he's booking. Jake the Snake Roberts is a big shark. Many of the guys, almost every single name on the card was a big shark in this business at one point or another. How's this kid going to be able to? The Jets recently got rid of Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh cannot talk to Aaron Rodgers with a straight face and tell him something that's right or wrong. It's not going to work.
Now, everybody was eager, so I don't think they anticipated a problem of this nature. Otherwise, you
Right.
would have brought in somebody like Jake's father, Grizzly Smith, who used to run
Right.
locker rooms and would
You-
knock you on your ass if you
Yeah,
didn't
you might
behave.
need Bear Bryant, unfortunately, in this situation with Jake.
There's another point that has to be injected. Back in those days, there are a lot of people. This was before the smoke it, swallow it generation. A lot of those people in that age demographic worked drunk. Some of
Right.
them did it to allegedly hide the pain due to an orthopedic condition or something, but there were plenty of guys who had a fifth of courage before they went into the squared circle. The thing with Jake is Jake wasn't drunk; he was sloshed. He would have breathalyzer. Jesus, he would have set a new record. And I agree with you; he should have been pulled. Tragically, he wasn't, and it cost a lot of people. We had a future there, goddammit. We had a future there. It was perfect for the guys that went in there as true professionals. The Mess brothers schlepped their ring all the way from Pennsylvania. We had a future. If
So,
that had gone the way it wanted to go, Fostone would be alive.
so let me ask you this, Fred. You're still around the business. When you see Jake Roberts to this day, did he ever apologize for that? I mean,
He
he
doesn't think
found
he did anything wrong.
Well, there you
He
go.
doesn't
so
think he did anything wrong. And
There it is.
I'm courteous, professional courtesy. Hi, how are you? Good that they have the loose handshake in wrestling because that's all he'd ever
well,
get from
Fred.
me.
At some point, I mean, did you ever
Yeah.
come across him and say, "Hey, man, you really fucked everybody out of a lot of money"? Did you ever bring it up to him or anything like that?
I will confess to you that I did not. I
Okay.
don't think I could have said it civilly because I
Right.
was too
Yeah.
angry. It wasn't for
Yeah.
me. I had my real job. But a lot of these guys, where that was their bread and butter, they had a great opportunity there. A great opportunity. You had a promoter with deep pockets. You had somebody that was enthusiastic about it. You had a promotional crew. You had people like Nikita that were working there. It could have been great. It could, like Marlon Brando said, I could have been a champion.
And they had some young talent. They had Two Cold Scorpion and they had Julio De Niro.
Julio
So
De
they were going to
Niro.
bring in some
Julio De
young ones as well,
Niro.
you know?
Wow.
And yeah, and it's like
I
it
haven't
wasn't
heard that
just
in a
going to be
while.
dinosaurs. It was
Right.
he was going to develop other talent. But after that, and then there was a lot of thievery, not by the boys, but people with the cable. And the poor man, I don't know if he broke
Right.
even even.
I don't
Right.
even know if he knew what the accurate buy rate
Right.
was.
Guy,
But when we
guy,
were going home on our plane, which went into Philadelphia, Lou Albano was on it, Snooker was on it, I was on it, and one of the other two. And we were all in the same section. And from the minute we took off to the minute we landed, you could have heard a pin drop because everybody was depressed. We said our one goodbye hugs. My wife got to meet Lou Albano, whom I had known for years,
right.
got in the car and went home, and then got up the next day and started to read the ridicule. And it pissed me off because nobody seemed to want to ferret out the truth.
But you know
Jake
what the bottom
Roberts is
line is?
blameworthy. Quote me on that.
It's like going to Yankee Stadium and booing at an old timers game. Have some damn respect, especially if you're making money off the asses of these men and women. Son of a bitch. Have some dignity at least.
Well,
There was no respect.
No
unfortunately,
respect.
that's one of the reasons why my partner and myself have been called bullies because of basically what you just said. That was one of the most selfish, self-centered acts. And
Yes.
you know what? I got to ask them, Mike, and please forgive me for asking this question, but once upon a time, you both incredibly knowledgeable, people, our guest tonight, which I'm so grateful to have. You guys were fans. Now, has the business over the years, because Mike and I would
Jimmy,
never.
you're. I gotta just interrupt. You're a mind reader because that's exactly what I was. Keep going.
Well,
Keep
Mike,
going.
that's why we've been friends for 43 years, basically, and wrestling has been one of the most important parts of our friendship. And I'm proud to say that now. It's true, we did have to hide that back in 1982. But since you guys were both fans, and then you get in the business and you see how look, as a fan, it's precious just being a fan because you don't know about, especially back in the day when it was real. Thank you. You know, you didn't look at them and want to know every last thing about them and their negative side and stuff. That's why, thank God, when my father passed away, his hero was Joe DiMaggio. Thank God. Joe DiMaggio had not been, oh, and he did this and he did that. And, Joe DiMaggio died a hero to my father. There's a baseball card in his pocket where he rests to this day, you know. Did it change you guys as far as wrestling? Because as I would never trade the memories I've had with Mike doing this show, it has jaded me.
And let
And
me
I,
let me just I got to add one other thing, Jimmy. So
sure,
I'm a huge Vince McMahon Jr. guy, right?
yeah,
As a
I
businessman,
am too.
right? And when you talk about this, and I'm reading the list of characters you have at this event, right?
Right.
And again, for Jim Neidhart to break a deal right
Oh,
when he knows your back is against it,
oh,
and then
just
you got a guy like Yokozuna who's from this great Samoan family, and no one steps up for the common man like yourselves. When people bitch about Vince McMahon being a scumbag to these guys, you have no choice because if you give them an inch, they're going to take it all.
they'll
All
take
right.
a mile.
Now it's you guys, all you guys. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Nikita?
Fred.
Well, let's put it like this. In the very famous movie, Miracle on 34th Street, when R.H. Macy is on the stand, his key line is, "You cannot argue with success." And that's true. And people are jealous of success. And if they can't find themselves a berth, should I talk about Vince Russo? Should I talk about John Arezzi? Should I talk about Nikita Brezhnikov? How many people envied him? Oh, I could do it better. No, you couldn't. You're just jealous that he's doing it. When you talk about Volkov, when I got into it, I was a kid in a candy store and I loved it. And I stay active in it. And I'll be talking to Nikita about this because we are going to do a series of shows in New Jersey. And I think I know a Russian who's in need of guidance. I'll
Beautiful.
leave it at that.
Thank you.
I formed friendships. Nikita, Chris Ronquillo, one of the finest men that ever wore shoe leather. I was even friendly with Buddy Rogers, not to that extent. Arnold Skolin, some names I've mentioned. Meeting you two guys, meeting guys that are on the level, that have the foresight, that have the desire for curiosity, that want to go behind the headline. Anybody can make up a headline for shock value. My God, the New York Post has been doing it for years and the Daily News before them. That's what gets people to plunk down their money and buy the paper.
The
Then when they read
post.
the article, it's
Oh
like
yeah.
taking off the bra and finding out that what you thought were 38 double D's are 32 A minus.
What do I do? And what do I do with that information? God, I hate the media. Anyway.
Well, exactly. Exactly. It's
But
information that's designed to fill. But
it's
we
entertainment.
looked at it. If you
Oh,
ever saw Nikita work, if you ever saw his ethic, we never went on the side and started giggling. We never stepped out of gimmick. Not until we were well past the gorilla position when we went backstage. That's the way we were trained when kayfabe was religion. And while elements of it have perished, there are still elements of it. No skyscraper can stand without a foundation. And that's what Nikita Brezhnikov has. Again, I put my heart to that because it's the gospel.
Thank you. You know, you see the problem with this internet, these kids that don't know what's going on, they badmouth Vince because that's what you do now is badmouth Vince. They
Yep.
didn't see him like we did. They were still either they weren't born yet or they were watching Barney and eating their own boogers when Vince was doing his thing. And now because you're supposed to badmouth him, they badmouth him. Hey, I've heard people that should be a little bit more savvy say, well, Vince McMahon should have had a pension plan. He should have had health care for these guys. It's like you're independent contractors, asshole. What part do you not get about that? I'm one. When I go work jobs for people, I don't figure I'm going to be on your payroll and you're going to give me a pension. No, that's it. I'm here for the night. Give me the money and I'm gone. That's
But
it. I'm
what-
talking
So,
acting.
Nikita, let me ask you this question then. So I agree with you on that. So then, in that case, do you kind of agree that Jim Neidhart had that right to go, you know what? I got these
No,
guys against their back against the wall. I'm an independent guy. Now you're going to have to pay me.
No, because he should. I can't testify because I come from a background of law. So if I don't see it, I can't say it. I don't know what his contract was, but I know what I witnessed when he was there saying it.
And he signed his contract. He was going to get what he agreed to take. So he didn't honor the contract. He breached.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're going to do that now? Everybody that works this business knows you don't do that shit when they're ready to walk. The music's playing. You don't start fucking around now. You'll deal with it later, or you should have dealt with it earlier.
So back to
Not
Jimmy's
now.
point then. Here you guys become your fans, and now you're in the industry, and you're legitimate players in the industry. When this is happening and you see this unfolding, you saw the Jake the Snake bullshit. Now he's doing this shit. Are you looking at the other wrestlers like, can someone do something here? Can someone straighten this guy out? Or is it like, whatever?
I knew that I knew the locker room etiquette better. Would I have thought it subliminally? Yes. Would I have thought it was going to happen? No way in hell. Because I knew the mentality, and some of it was very different from the mores that the four of us have formed over the years. Very different.
Said it, Fred. You said it like it was like a tomb riding back because everybody knew. I think people were looking for a bugle to play taps. They were watching it, the ship sinking right before their very eyes, and they had such high hopes that you're not going to be millionaires. But again, it's not just about the money. These men and women performed for years, and they wanted to do some more.
And let me ask you another question, consistent with what Nikita just raised. This was a quarter of a century ago. The whole show up until that point was as clean as newly laundered clothes. And all of a sudden, here he is with a make-believe phallic symbol massaging his main vein. What does the father tell their child?
Oh, forget it.
What do you see when it comes across the screen?
Yeah.
How do you explain it?
Yeah.
Oh, it was clean. It was fun back then. And here's this guy wanking, whacking. Give me a break.
And before that happened, all this bad press that was given, you couldn't hear yourself talk because actually there was a little mistake in the match with the Bushwhackers because it was so loud. People were into it. They were loving what we were doing.
Right.
Because I actually announced that Sheik was going to do the clubs, but Nikolai couldn't hear because it was so loud. So he takes the mic and starts singing. Sheik's looking like, well, I'm supposed to do the clubs, so it was a little bit screwed up there. But it was that loud. People were into it.
Nikita, let me ask you this. Obviously, you were upset too about this when you sat down, or because you were friends with Nikolai. What did Nikolai say to you when you explained your experience or how upset you were?
First, he said, "Why you look at that bullshit? Who gives a fuck? What do they know? They never been in the ring one time." I said, "But Nikolai, this isn't right. You guys paid the price. You shouldn't be." And again, it's like booing at an old timers game at Yankee Stadium. Have some respect.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Was it the best performance of all time? No, but they were trying. They really were out there trying. Because, I mean, look at Abby's match with One Man Gang. I mean, I think Bill Stone was a little bit taken back by that, but it's like, okay.
I called hell. That was my match.
Right. Fred was the right. And it's like, okay, but they're out there doing hardcore. Okay, we'll let that go. So they put it out. It wasn't like people were going through the motions. I mean, they bled buckets of blood that night. Okay, they were trying.
Oh,
and Sherry looked great. Sherry doing her thing with George. I mean, come on.
Nikita, I wasn't really talking about that people were shitting on the show. I'm talking about that you had this legitimate opportunity, and I agree with you.
Oh.
If Jake doesn't do this, you have this opportunity. It's like a niche audience, but I think it could have grown. My question to you is: you're angry. Jake fucks it up, right? Do you turn to Nikolai and you're like, "What the fuck, Nick?" And does he say anything to you?
Well, he said the same thing that I would say to you right now. And I've been in two worlds, police and wrestling. Nobody can fuck it up better than they can for themselves. Believe me. All you got to do is give them the opportunity and they'll fuck it up. Never fails.
Yeah, these guys could mess up the wet dream.
I had to put the fist down. That's right. Exactly right, Jimmy.
There's another factor. Who might have been able to ameliorate things to a certain point? Solie had just developed his throat cancer.
Yeah.
Randy Rosenblum wouldn't know a headlock from a hammerlock.
I
You had
remember.
Dutch Mantel there a little bit. Randy was a nice guy, but he was not a wrestling guy. And he certainly wasn't somebody. I mean, Vince used to bring in Rod Trungard to do the matches from the Garden. He was fantastic. He had the thundering voice from ocean to ocean, coast to coast, mountain to mountain. And he set the table before serving the meal. But Rosenblum didn't know a thing. I mean, when I listened to it, when I got the DVD and I listened to it, I just wanted to say, it wasn't supposed to turn into a comedy.
Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't. Abby did his job. Abby and I always, from the first time he bladed me, he said, "Come here, I like kosher meat," and that was a joke. After that, that's exactly what he said. But that night I was a little weary because I knew that he already bladed Gang with it. But I got to tell you something. Everything Nikita says is right. One person, one bad block in the wall can cause the wall to crumble. Fosstone production should have been a beginning. It shouldn't have been a fait accompli. And that's what Jake made it. If you listen, I hope you're fucking well proud of yourself.
And Vince had his eyes there that night too. Paul Bearer
You
showed
better
up.
believe. You
Yep.
better believe he had his eyes there. A lot of people had their eyes there. He wasn't the only one. So did TBS. So did some of the others. Just like I say, I could have been something, as Marlon Brando said in On the Waterfront.
No, it's funny you guys talk, 'cause as you guys are speaking, I'm thinking to myself, they had their eyes in. Maybe if it was hitting, they would have been like, "Hey, you know what? I'll fund this a little bit because we can get something out of this."
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
before we call it a night, first of all, again, what you guys both have done for the industry as a fan, and that's what Jimmy and I are. We thank you both. You've
Thank
made
you.
a difference in this industry. I do have to ask both of you this though. Dutch Mantel, you brought him up. He's become the podcast darling of the internet. People love him. I personally, as a wrestling fan, never thought he was a good wrestler. I hear he had a great wrestling mind. I don't really think he had that either. Again, I'm just a fan.
Here we go.
But since you knew him, set me straight or tell me if I'm right. Dutch Mantel, am I right or wrong?
I don't know
I
that much
vote, I,
about him. Go ahead, Fred.
I vote with Monty. I think he's good. I think he's good for setting the table, but he's not the guy to serve the meal.
Mm.
He helped trim the fat that night for sure.
Definitely.
But
Not all negative. A lot of talent in that man. Right person in the wrong role sometimes. If he hadn't been there, nobody would have rescued the commentary whatsoever.
no, it would have been a night.
Nobody. So for that, he deserves a battle ribbon. He earned it. Well done, Dutch.
But I laugh when people say, "Oh, he's got a great mind for wrestling." It's fucking wrestling. What kind of great mind are you supposed to have? All you need is talent, and somebody will write this. Well, here's the ending. Here's the storyline. There's no great mind. He ain't curing
Right.
cancer. It's a wrestling match.
Right.
Here,
Right, Mike.
Jake Roberts, it comes down to this. Jake Roberts wanted to steal the heat. He wanted to steal the heat from colleagues. And in doing so, he cost them, I'll say it again one last time, a significant amount of money and a future where maybe, just maybe, they could have gone out there as they got older and had a steady source. Because you're right, they're independent contractors. Come on, Bruce Beefcake, a part-time change maker on the Boston MTA subway system? It's not like these guys squirreled it away into 401ks, etc. So they
Right.
needed the money. They needed the money.
Jimmy.
And thank you for your comments, because even Bruno was a fan. Nikolai was a fan. They all start out as fans. And I swear
Right.
till this day, Bruno's death, I think, took part of Nikolai, because he died just a couple months later. And Bruno died April, Nikolai died in July, and that really took him down. Everybody starts out, well, 99% are fans. You have to love it.
Right.
Here's the real obvious question as we discuss this and we draw this to an end. How close are you guys to Dark Side of the Ring doing something about something on this event?
You have my phone line tapped?
That's pretty
Nikita,
funny.
I defer to the constable.
Dummer she
Former
yet
constable.
about it. She doesn't speak the English.
All right. One last thought while I have you guys here.
Wait, you let him off the hook. We're about to break breaking news because obviously they're speaking to the people from Dark Side. So,
Yeah, but
both are mum.
they're
Let's
being
just say
very
there's
like,
been talk and we're open to further discussion.
Excellent.
okay, all
Excellent.
right. Mike will be ready to watch that at least 17 times, right, Mike?
Absolutely.
You know. One last thought about Vince McMahon, and I want to see your take on this. I laugh sometimes when I hear, how the evil Vince McMahon took all the territories and was able to buy them and blah blah blah. When I believe in my heart that he might have been the biggest shark with the biggest vision and the most money and the execution to do it. But I always felt that the territories themselves, if they could eat the other territory next to them, they would. So
Yeah.
wasn't it dog eat dog between promoters and Vince just happened to
Yes.
be the biggest shark at the end of the day?
Fred said it earlier about Dennis Carluzzo. The show, Fred, at the Annapolis Arena in Baltimore, I helped Dennis get that started.
Yeah.
What happened? Promoters put out information, the show's canceled, tear down posters, bad
Right.
mouth that you're not going to get paid. Yeah,
Right.
they cut
Right.
each other's throats from day one. That's why
Right.
WWF broke away from the NWA, started
Right.
there because they couldn't
Right.
fucking get along
Right.
business-wise.
They were
Do you
so
guys
busy sabotaging each other that they never saw Junior coming.
right? There you go, Mike.
Wow.
There it is, right there.
There it is.
He was smarter. He had a broad vision that he obviously can. Look, every corner of the world now knows who the WWE are, so he knew what he was doing.
And he
At
had
the
the
end of the day,
balls because every dime
he
was
did.
riding on it on
That's right.
WrestleMania 1. If it
That's right.
failed, you wouldn't know Vince McMahon's name anymore, believe me.
Well, with that, guys, incredible. Again, American heroes, both of you. And
Thank
again,
you.
thank you for your service. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
9/11. Thank you for serving this country, Nikita. Thank you for what you've done for wrestling fans. And
Thank you.
again, you guys should be very proud of what you've both accomplished. I want to thank you again for joining Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast.
It's been an honor.
Yes, honor and a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you.
Hopefully we talk soon, gents. We'll talk
Yes.
soon. God bless.
Okay. God bless.
Be well, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Jimmy, pretty incredible, right?
It's one of those that I'll probably watch 3 or 4 times. I don't make a habit
Dude,
of that, but
my God. It's
Yeah.
like, look, we knew Nikita, right? I was always impressed by
it's
Nikita.
been a while since we talked to Nikita, but of course I remember. But yeah,
Well, he's appeared on Dan and Benny, and I always tell Benny, like, I always love when Nikita's on because he's such a great listen. And
of course.
God, fucking Fred, man.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said before you started the show, and it wasn't an insult by any means whatsoever. There are guys that are not Bruno Sammartino, that are not Superstar Graham, whoever, that have just as many amazing memories from their vantage point. And that's what we saw tonight. That was fantastic.
Dude, I mean, I look, that 9/11 story blew me away, bro. I mean, I got to be 100% honest.
Look, that's why when you think about it, of all the people that live in New York, how many people were doing I hate using the word cleanup. It's a removal. Whatever they were doing, a tiny speck of our population was doing that. Those were the kind of people, you always talk about who you want in a foxhole with you. Those are the kind of people you want in a foxhole with you.
Analyze this one for me, and I found this very interesting too. So, again, we only touched the surface, but it seemed like Fred had this pretty close relationship with his father, and they were bonded by wrestling, whether Fred dragged his father into it. Nikita, also wrestling fan, had a terrible relationship with his father, which was not bonded by wrestling.
Right. Right.
To me, isn't it okay? I'm trying to get it across, but isn't it amazing how two people from kind of two different families,
Right. Right.
how wrestling drew them together, wrestling in a lot of ways is kind of amazing. It's better than football. It's better than baseball in that kind of way. When you're a wrestling
You know what?
mind,
I'll give wrestling as a sport because we still call it a sport. I know
sure,
we
of
call it
course.
other things. Wrestling as a sport is just as special as baseball. It ties a relationship sometimes with a parent or sometimes with a friend. How you doing, friend? You
Mm,
know what I mean?
yeah,
It does what baseball does. It does what a good rock band does. When I think every single time I listen to Triumph, I think of you.
sure.
You know what I'm
You know,
saying?
it's so funny. I was gonna
It's
say
it,
every time I listen to the Police, I think of you. No
right,
matter what song it is, I'm
right,
like, oh, that's fucking Jimmy
right.
right there.
Well,
Uh,
there it is. You
dude,
know,
I gotta, I, I very not very rarely, but I'm always it's a pleasure when you're moved by someone or
I'm mo-
you're out you're trying to think of the word, but like not in awe because I don't want to get too crazy about it, but it's like those two guys are fucking amazing, dude. I can't say enough about it. I could have sat there and listened to them speak for 5 hours and not have an
Oh
issue.
yeah, oh yeah. That could have easily gone a good 3+ hours, and I even my bad leg would not be bothering me. So that's
I will
you
tell
know
you
back
this.
to the bad leg. Right.
Again, Monte the Pharaoh, again, we were born in a studio, right? We were different than everybody else. Obviously, you carried on with your life to Florida and the studio closed and I'm in another studio and we know that trial and tribulations here. But
Yeah.
this is the one type of interview I would have loved to have in studio. Um
Yeah, I mean, I think about the studio, but if I think about the studio, I start thinking about everything else
yeah, no, I hear you.
because
I got you.
it's all connected. Like Long Island, I think about even the old studio. I think about the pizza place I used to eat at the old studio
The one
before I
thing
go
we
on.
didn't ask what
I
they
think
thought
about
about we didn't ask about what they thought about AEW. There's so much more to ask about. And I got to tell you, the other thing I'm pretty impressed about too. I wanted to go back to Fred and his relationship with his father. So again, I don't know only what we heard, but there was a
right,
giving there. And you know what
right,
manifested from that giving and love, I think? Served this country, Vietnam. Fuck
right,
just Vietnam. He served this country, right?
right,
And
right,
when 9/11 hit, he risked his entire life. I mean, dude, we
right,
all know the sickness that came from helping people at 9/11, right? Those
right,
are real,
right.
and Nikita, a police officer. These are real heroes, dude.
Right. And we already know about how good news doesn't pay it, any viewage on the internet. People don't care about good news. They were good people though, obviously. It's something that we all strive to be. I could never be that good. Like I said during the interview, they're in the pecking order. They served their country and they were cops. I mean, what
Well,
what am I
dude.
gonna
I
what
mean,
am I
look,
gonna say?
when
You know?
if you're dick measuring, I agree with you. You and me we're on that second level compared to those guys. And the other thing
Well,
is,
you served your country, you
but
stopped them,
it's not just that,
you
dude. It's
know?
like I think about it this way too. They just didn't do it in life, right? Look what they did for
Right.
wrestling. Look what they did for
Right.
wrestling. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I
Right.
mean, these
Well,
guys. Good.
it takes everybody. That's the funny thing. At the end of the day, sure, we focus in on when we were kids, Morocco and Valentine in the ring. Do you know how many
Mm,
people it took to get that match prepared? You know
sure.
what I mean? That's why we talk to the people we just talked to because they're part of that machine.
But
You know?
I'll leave it with this. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's two guys. They have their dream. They're in wrestling, right?
Right.
Then they
Right.
finally, there's a gold chip out there, right? There's a guy with some money and he wants to promote wrestling,
Yeah.
and all they have to do is behave a certain way.
Right. And
And
they.
I'm going to call it like I see it, right?
Right. Right.
A piece of shit like Jim Neidhart and Jake Roberts, like destroyed
Right.
people's dreams.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's like,
They did.
and think about it
Listen.
this way: fucking Tony Khan rewards a piece of shit like Jake Roberts
Right. Right.
with a
Of
fucking
course.
a lifetime contract.
Yeah, because this is life. I mean, come on. Mike was a good friend of ours, Mantar. You know, I mean, I can't say that about too many people we've come across.
Sure.
But Mike was a friend of ours, and we liked him. You know, I don't throw love around, but shit, man. If I was gonna like love a dude for the friendship he is and
Yeah.
everything he is, yeah, man, he was fucking cool. You know, how did Scott Hall treat him? How did he treat him? He treated him like shit. He hazed the fuck out of him, and he made sure he stayed at the bottom of a card. The guy in real life probably could have took Scott Hall and turned his whole head backwards, you know, and he got that raw end of the deal. So it's like, you know, it seems like that's what happens. Unfortunately, it happens a lot in wrestling. You know, I don't know how much it happens in other
You know,
areas.
it goes back to the first show. People panicking because of the hurricane, so they decide they're not taking their dog. So instead of trying to do something or help the dog, they
Right.
tie it to a tree so it
Right.
fucking drowns. I mean, Jake Roberts is no different than the fucking guy tying a dog to the fucking tree.
I got to be honest. If I'm the key to Briscoe, or if I'm Fred the ref, I'm not saying shit either that night. I want to keep my job. I'm not going up against.
I'm not faulting them for not saying anything.
You are. I'm saying it from myself.
I'm going to tell you who I'm faulting, and I was trying to get that point across these two guys.
Right.
This is like, and you started the right way. It's like we came in here as fans. We meet these people, and the majority of them are good people, right? The wrestlers I'm talking about.
Yeah, they are.
But we've seen enough of the bullshit working all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, you know what? You're a wrestler. You sign a deal. You know Jim Neidhart.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't say anything.
And then
where's your human decency, you fucking asshole?
They got the balls to pull that shit, too. What's Jim Neidhart thinking? He's the ultimate warrior? I want $1,000 more. Fuck you. Get the fuck out there. You signed a contract.
Yeah, and again, you know what? He knew better. You know why? Jim Neidhart wasn't stupid, right? He knew that everybody was panicking at that point. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that just shows the morality of a lot of these fucking guys. They have no fucking moral fiber, man.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, who does that shit?
You know what? It's funny. You say, he wasn't stupid. He took advantage of the situation. Guess what? After what you just said, he doesn't sound very smart to me. Sounds like a stupid ass that pulled a fast one. You know,
just fucking took advantage of another fucking situation.
We've had that happen to us like way too many times with bookings. We've had people pull that shit on us.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
and then I think about his wife. Like, say Neidhart gets home and he goes, "Hey, honey, guess what? I got another $1,000. Oh, great job! Way to take advantage of those people."
Right.
I mean, where's the moral fiber of any of these fucking people, man?
And I'll tell you this one thing about it. I didn't get a chance to tell them this, but here's a fact that, people can hate the pay-per-view and talk shit about it all day. Dude, it's a quarter of a century later, and we're still talking about that pay-per-view.
Oh, dude, this is definitely going Dark Side of the Ring.
So how about that?
I'm like, that's got to be a Dark Side of the Ring episode. Absolutely.
It should, and
then Dark Side could go pay Jake as he smokes a cigarette with his fucking his oxygen in his fucking nose and go, I was just fucking.
Yeah. By the way, that he'll show up for.
Oh, fuck yeah. Come on,
but,
please.
How many times did we have him booked with the song and dance?
Remember that time I approached him when he didn't show up? He's like, brother, I didn't know it.
Yeah,
fuck
well,
you, dude.
The last time he blamed the agent. Oh, it's the agent's fault, blah, blah, blah. No,
it's not my fault.
Yeah, it's never his fault. I mean, I think Fred said that tonight. It's never Jake's fault.
I'll tell you what, though Jake Roberts or Jim Neidhart, well, Jim Neidhart's gone now, but they're not half the men those two guys are. So in the end, who wins anyway? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Those guys win. Those fucking assholes. All right, listen, I'm going to send us out. I'm going to play a little AEW video because I know how much you love AEW, and then I'll do the outro. So you want to send us out after this marathon of a show, literally an hour and a half. And I got to tell you, I could have listened to those guys for another 3 hours. So
they were fantastic. Well, you have been watching Monte and the Pharaoh with a bad back. See, there's that bad back again.
Feel better, bro.
Yeah, I hope so. And now stay tuned for the Mark Tony Khan and his Mark Company. Until next time. Later.
Put me out of my misery! Do you guys like Wheeler Yuta? Bye.